Okay, I'm going to call the April 26, 2021 Hingham School Committee meeting to order at 6 o'clock. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to an order issued by the Governor of Massachusetts dated March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You're hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the Town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify me at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that I may inform all other participants of said recording. Is anyone recording the meeting on the panel? And if you're an attendee, if you could raise your hand and let us know. Okay, seeing none. Next, item 2 is motion to enter into executive session. Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to enter into executive session and to reconvene in open session for the purposes of discussing strategy regarding negotiations with the bus drivers and food service workers associations for collective bargaining agreements for the 2020 to 2023 school years, and to discuss strategy regarding negotiations with HEA Unit A regarding an MOA for the reopening of schools for the 2020 to 2021 school year, and to discuss strategy regarding negotiations with non-union personnel for contract negotiations, the public discussion of which would be detrimental to the committee's bargaining position.
I'll second.
Thank you both. Let's see, M.G.L.
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Ness?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
I don't see Libby. Hopefully she'll join us in there. And Liza?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Okay, for the 3 people that are on the call right now, we are going to executive session, but we're going to reconvene at 7 p.m. and then we'll start with the public part of our meeting then. So we hope you can join us then. Good evening, everyone. We are going to reconvene the April 26, 2021 meeting of the Hingham School Committee. I am going to read the comment again because there are new people on the line. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to an order issued by the Governor of Massachusetts dated March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the Town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. If anyone, Harbor Media will be recording this tonight. If anyone on the panel is going to record it, if you could just unmute yourself and let me know. And if anyone else in the public is planning to record it, if you could just raise your hand so we can inform everyone else. Okay, not seeing anyone. And I will just note, I'm Carrie Neam, and I'm participating in this remotely, as are my colleagues, M.G.L, Jen Benham, Ness Carenti, Carlos De Silva, Libby Lewicki, and Liza O'Reilly. Okay, the next item of business is approval of minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on April 5th, 2021.
I move that we approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on April 5th, 2021.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. M.G.L?
Aye.
Ness?
Aye.
Or Jen?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Liza?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Next is 4.2 minutes of the school committee meeting held on April 12th, 2021.
I move that we approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on April 12th, 2021.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that one? Okay, seeing none. M.G.L?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Ness?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
Libby? Aye. Liza?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Item 5 is questions and comments. The Hingham School Committee encourages community engagement and welcomes questions and comments as agenda items are discussed in the meeting. In addition, we have set aside up to 15 minutes at the beginning of this meeting for comments or questions that fall under the purview of the school committee and are not already on tonight's agenda. If any guests wish to speak, please raise your hand using the raise hand function, state your name and address, and address your comments to the chairperson. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must relate to topics within the scope of responsibility of the school committee. as established by Mass General laws. The responsibilities of the school committee are to 1, select and evaluate the superintendent, 2, review and approve budgets for public education for the district, and 3, establish educational goals and policies for the schools in the district. Speakers are encouraged to present their remarks in a respectful manner and to consider the privacy interests of others. The public comment period is not a time for debate or response to comments by the school committee. The school committee is not adopting or endorsing any of the comments made during the public comment period. So that being said, I see Matt Cosman. If you could just unmute yourself and say your name and address, please.
Matt Cosman, 12 Summit Drive. Thanks, Carrie. For the better part of a year, we've heard the school committee and administration's clear priority of preventing COVID-19 spread in school amongst children, teachers, and admin, while attempting to deliver a strong educational experience for our students. I believe the time has come to take the data that is out there around health risks associated with contracting COVID-19, the data that is out there around in-school transmission, as well as the fact that teachers will soon be fully vaccinated should they choose to be, and shift this thinking to first and foremost design for the most outstanding educational experience for our students, while also taking care to watch for COVID-related issues. COVID-19 will be here in some form for the next several years and likely longer, so if we continue to follow a policy of heavy quarantining, monitoring student travel, having such an extreme focus on ensuring that we do everything we can to avoid students and teachers getting COVID-19, I fear we will not get back to normal for years to come. We need to shift our focus to delivering in-person instruction that looks similar to the fall of 2019. In practical terms, we need to spend more time now planning for a full return of all students in fall 2021. Carrie, I know you noted to me, you mentioned the school committee and school administration are working on this, but I would ask that we make these plans public. We need a specific plan for how we will deliver full-time in-person instruction in the fall if the 3-foot distancing guidance is still in place. We know we cannot fit all 3 students, for instance, at 3-foot distancing in Foster. Where are we planning on putting these kids? Can we extend the lease at St. Jerome's? How will we manage high school schedules to avoid multiple hours of study hall that we have this year? How can we adjust our quarantine policies to reflect how often transmission is occurring in close contexts? How can we reduce the need for masks at all times so that students can get a more normal learning experience to the extent possible? There will be variance, there will be pressure from the MTA. There cannot be a reliance on potential vaccinations for children. We need to look ahead and recognize all of that and figure out how we move forward. I don't want to minimize the challenges this year has brought and the very real pain and suffering that some in this country have experienced as it relates to COVID-19. With that said, now that teachers will be fully vaccinated in the fall, we need to look at the data that shows that 258 children between the age of 0 to 17 have died in the US from COVID-19, less than the 450 0 to 17-year-old children that died from the flu over a similar time frame as 2 years ago, and similar to the number that have died from the flu this year. The data that shows many states have been back in school full-time, some with masks, some without masks, all year without statistical differences in COVID transmission with children in states like ours that have been slower to prioritize children's learning over COVID risk. The data that Dr. Labilowa presented that shows the academic loss experienced and the data that exists around children's mental health challenges. Yes, there will be students and teachers that come down with COVID-19, but we can't let that be the driving force in the fall in how we deliver an outstanding learning experience for our children. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Susie O'Hara?
Hi, I'm Susie O'Hara, 7 Wanderers Drive, Hingham. I just would also like to echo what Matt just said as well. I think parents across the district would like to know what the plan is for the return in the fall with specifics, not just, we're hoping it'll be okay or it's wishing it's going to be this or that. Because at this point, the only recourse parents have at this point is our vote for the budget. And before, I go any further, I'd just like to say that I have supported 1,000% the budget that the school is proposing to be voted on at town meeting. And that budget is long overdue, and all of the budgets that are coming in the upcoming years are also long overdue. That said, why should parents vote for that budget when we have absolutely zero guarantees that we will have a full return in the fall? There's been no specifics delivered to parents. We've had everything this year has not met up to criteria, and I just think it's a very hard sell at this point when we've been not offered anything in return, basically. So that's all I'd like to know. Is I'd like as well to understand what the specifics are for the return in the fall before the town meeting in a few weeks, because frankly at this point it is going to impact my vote.
Thank you. Next, I don't see any other hands. So we have number 6 is the superintendent's report. Dr. Austin.
Thank you very much to the chair, and I'll ask Chair if you would pull up the PowerPoint for me, please. Sherry?
Yep, I'm getting that right up.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead and begin the slides. Thanks. So as I always do, we'll do a quick update of the COVID report, which has been very stable over the last many weeks, remaining in yellow. This past week that ended on the 22nd, there were 23.8 cases per 100,000 here in Hingham, which remained us in the yellow, or remain in the yellow as far as our weekly report. Our positive test results has also been very, very stable. This last week was 2.81, ending on 422. So in our own report this week, we reported only 2 cases. That's subject to change, as I'll notice in a minute. I'll note in a minute that it was April vacation, so some information is still coming in. But at the time of this writing, we had 2 cases. We went from 281 total to 283, and both of those were in students. And you can see that results from the 418 to 424 with only 2 cases this week. As well as what we'd expect after April vacation with our long period of time off, our quarantine numbers are substantially reduced. We had no out of quarantine in our schools last week. Obviously, we're not in operation, and we opened up fully without any quarantine today. So in our COVID-19 testing of staff, to date, we have tested 1,903 tests, with only 2 of those being positive for a 99.9% negative test result, or a 0.10% positive test rate. And then as far as the students, up until this past week, we actually included the numbers from 423. So we have now tested 2,123 individuals in pools. And this past week, we actually, if you look at the 423 week, we had 21 pools, which was 188 students. So I was very pleased to see that on Friday, and thank the parents for participating. Of that, we actually had 2 positive pools, which resulted in a 9.5% positive pool rate. However, we conducted 17 Abbott Binax rapid tests, or Binax Now test, and all of them were negative, which was very good news in our follow-up. So to date, we have still had 1 positive individual result from over 326 pools of students. So that's very good news for the schools. And this is just another number of, we look at the graph of the weekly positive, and we can see the 424 down to 2. The week before that, we had 14. And so we've had some fluctuation, and then that 2 this last week. And then the staff count last week was actually 0. So that's bounced between 0 and 2 over the last, since the end of February. We've been bouncing between 0 and 2 cases per staff per week. So some data that I want to talk about. Data is maybe incomplete due to the April vacation break. I will update that for you next time. There is information that's coming in. So, and some came in late today that we had some positive cases during the week that reported to us. To date, at the time of this writing, we'd had 1 positive student pool that resulted in another 2 positive student pools and the identification of still 1 positive COVID-19 case. The testing is used to identify asymptomatic cases in our schools, and today we've had identified 2 staff through our weekly staff testing and 1 student through our pool testing program. We continue to encourage everyone to participate in our testing programs. The number of cases prior to the break were slightly elevated, as I've already said, and should serve as a reminder to us all that we all need to remain vigilant and observe the protocols that have been put in place to keep us all safe. There are some changes that I'll talk about in just a moment, but as of right now, the vaccine is now open for all persons aged 16 and over, and we encourage everyone to be vaccinated if they so choose. So quarantine change is effective immediately. On April 21, the quarantine guidance for close contacts was approved by the Executive Office of Health and Human Services after consultation with the Governor's Medical Advisory Board on COVID-19 and other medical advisors. The updated guidance is effective immediately as of the 21st. Close contacts who are exposed to COVID-19 positive individuals in the classroom or on the bus while both individuals were masked do not have to quarantine unless they were within 3 feet of distance of COVID-19 positive individuals for a total of 15 minutes during a 24-hour period. This is a substantial change. This does not apply if someone was identified as a close contact outside of the classroom or on the bus, for example, in sports, extracurriculars, lunch, etc., or if masks are not worn by both persons at the time of the exposure. All other close contacts must follow the standard protocol for when a close contact may return to school. I would anticipate that this will substantially reduce our close contacts as well as what we consider a close contact in school, as well as the number of students in quarantine. Since we are at least 3 feet apart in spacing, we should have a substantial reduction. The full guidance, this is always available to folks online. Full guidance is posted on the COVID-19 guidance page and available for download. So close contact reminders outside of the classroom or the bus. As a reminder, DPH defines close contact as being within 6 feet of a COVID-19 case, someone who was tested positive for a total of 15 minutes during a 24-hour period. Multiple brief or transitory interactions, less than a minute throughout the day, are unlikely to result in 15 minutes of cumulative contact and do not meet the definition of close contact. Being in the same room as an individual, if you are consistently separated by 6 feet of distance, does not meet the definition of a close contact. Close contacts can occur while being with, caring for, living with, visiting, or sharing a healthcare waiting room area or room with a COVID-19 case, or having direct physical contact with a person, such as hugging or kissing, or sharing, eating, or drinking utensils, or having direct contact with infection secretions of a COVID-19 case, for example, being coughed on, while not wearing recommended personal protective equipment. An update on in-person learning. As of today, all HBS students are attending school 5 days per week. Hingham Middle School is now operating on a full-day schedule for all students 5 days per week. Hingham High School is now operating on a full-day hybrid schedule for any student who wishes to attend for a full day. All in-person students are required to attend 5 days per week. Students who wish to work remotely in a hybrid model for the direct study hall during periods G and H may do so with parent consent. If a student wishes to attend a direct study hall in person during G and H block, he or she must commit to doing so for the remainder of the school year. The Commissioner of Education is likely to determine that all high schools must be fully in person prior to the end of the school year. We are waiting for news this week, and I anticipate that will happen this week. If this happens and he orders all of our high schools back to a full school year, the hybrid learning model will end, and all in-person students must plan on being in school for a full day. As was done in prior years, seniors will be allowed early dismissal at the end of the school day if they do not have a scheduled class. The district has established a reopening committee. This is something that I know that came up a little while ago. So we are establishing a reopening committee to review and plan for the fall of 2021. The first meeting of the committee will be held in May, and monthly updates will be provided to school committee and the public at its scheduled meetings. I will request that the chair of the school committee appoint a representative to that committee. So that is going to go in very soon. But to reiterate, it is our plan fully to be in school full-time on a regular schedule in the fall. This would be contingency plans in the case that the state has guidance that we need to follow. And so that's what this committee will do. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Dr. Austin. If anyone on the committee is interested in serving on the reopening committee, just shoot me an email so we know. Okay, does anyone on the school committee have any questions or comments for Dr. Austin on this? Okay, seeing none. Does anyone in the public have any questions? Susie O'Hara.
Hi, thanks again, Susie O'Hara, 7 Wanderers Drive. I have a couple of questions. With the pool testing, so to summarize, there are 2 cases out of over 300 pools. So basically very much less than 1% positives, correct?
That is very correct.
And when does the funding from the state for the pool testing dry up, and what's the plan at that point?
Right now, that is going through all of the summer. That has been extended to the summer. We've extended with the state to continue in that program, and so they will fund it through at least the summer.
Okay. And then with the committees that was formed for the reopening in the fall, what is the plan for communication to the rest of us? Because I have to say, I've been very disappointed in the school council's communications.
Yeah, we will report out every school committee meeting, so at least twice a month, and then we will post all of our documents online on the website.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think that's it, so we can move on to...
You have Matt Cosman.
Oh, sorry, Matt, if you could just identify yourself again.
Matt Cosman, 12 Summit Drive. Sorry, Susie and I are monopolizing this. So, Dr. Austin, I kind of wanted to follow up on the foster school specifically. It sounds like it's great to hear that we're going to have people looking at the fall, and the hope is that we can go back full time.
Oh,
but
Matt, I'm just going to stop you there. The fall plan is not on the agenda for tonight, so we can't answer any questions about that. Did you?
There was that bullet point specifically talking about the committee.
Yes, we'll be forming a committee. So do you have any questions about anything in the report?
Will the committee be able to, if they're just starting in May, be able to come up with a plan quickly enough to secure space in the case that there's not 3 feet spacing for foster school?
To be clear, we've been looking at that contingency or that possibility for quite some time. The committee is going to solidify plans and deliver those to the school committee for action. But we've been reviewing that potential for quite some time, as well as looking at our numbers. So nothing is off the table right now, and we are planning, and hopefully we'll have a solidified plan for the answer to your story. Yes, we will have a plan for the school committee soon enough before the summer.
Okay.
I think you have Heather C.
Heather C, yeah.
Hi, Heather Chisholm, 8 Black Horse Lane. Can you hear me? I can't tell. Okay. Just a quick question on the high school. You mentioned about the study halls at the end of the day. I know it's just day 1, and I did opt out of the study halls for my son. But now where you're saying it looks like we're going to go for probably full day soon. Question, it sounds like the study halls the kids were sent to the auditorium. I think in particular, just an off day today, they had no Wi-Fi, but a lot of kids crowded into the auditorium, no desks to do their homework. There are no real directed, I don't even know if there's teachers there. Kids were leaving the building, texting their parents, saying, come get me, this is awful. Kids were leaving at 11 with nobody even knowing that they left. So I'm just wondering can we get this organized better if this is going to be the case where they are going to be required to stay?
Yeah, I really can't speak to what happened this morning that people left without knowledge. I'm not aware of that. We'll certainly look into that. The auditorium was used today, and you're right, it was a large group. It was very much like the first day of school because we had such a large group, and that will be adjusted. I've already spoken to the principal about that, and so that will be adjusted. And again, this isn't perfect. We all know we've got guidelines we have to follow, and it's certainly not perfect, but we are working on that to make that better.
Okay, just a one follow-up too, because it seems like some freshmen in particular have 2 studies a day, so that's almost 100 and some odd minutes of study hall consecutively. So it just seems like a lot for kids to sit in a study hall for 2 hours.
Yeah, I understand that. I agree with that, and
okay.
You know, the administration and the directors and some central office folks are also meeting this week, and we're going to talk about that and see if there's any way we can improve that for folks. You know, we realize that it's late in the year. We have 35 school days left, and we want to make it all that we can be during that time, and so we'll continue to try to improve.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Heather. And I don't see any other hands at this point. Did you have an update on the SSCC, the Educational Collaborative?
What I'll say about that, I'm sorry, those are in your packet today. I won't go over those. You know, certainly you read any of those. It's just the minutes, and we talk about the budget coming up with the SSCC. Certainly let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, great, thank you. Item 7.1 is student communications. I think I saw Carly on the line.
She's raised her hand in there.
There you go, okay. Hey, Carly.
Hi, everyone. So as you all know, today marked the first day of in-person full-day classes at the high school in over a year, which is super exciting. So students were able to eat lunch either outside on the baseball field or on the bleachers, or also in the cafeteria. And those that chose to do so stayed in the building until 2:30 this afternoon. It was great for everyone to be back in the building, and it definitely reminded everyone of what school used to be like. And restored a sense of normalcy. Today also marks the kickoff to our spring sports season, so our fields were full of students trying out for our rugby, softball, baseball, tennis, lacrosse, and track teams. Before break, we also had many memorable moments, one of which included our National Honors Society ceremony, which was held in the auditorium, and students were able to walk across the stage and receive their certificates and celebrate their hard work over the past 4 years. Also, in honor of Jackie Robinson, our Unity Project team organized over 40 members of our high school community, faculty and students included, outside on our baseball fields where they participated in a few rounds of catch. And the goal was to promote unity as individuals were encouraged to pair up with someone unfamiliar and get to know them while tossing a baseball to each other. And this event brought our community closer together and inspired many people. We also have a new therapy dog that walks around. He's visited over 40 classrooms since his recent arrival. Our student council was also able to meet for the first time in person on their meeting before break, which was very successful. It was held before school in the auditorium, and the students were safely distanced. And then lastly, our class of 2021 held a voters registration drive where they encouraged and assisted students in registering to vote. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Carly. And I wanted to thank Michelle Grady for volunteering her time and her dog to come into the high school to spend some time with the kids too. Does anyone have any questions for Carly? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. 7.2 is communications received by the superintendent. Dr. Austin, do you have anything?
I have none tonight, thank you.
Okay. 7.3 is other communications. I have a couple of things. One is in your packet, you should see some documents from Kathy Reardon and the Climate Action Planning Committee. If their warrant article passes at town meeting, we'll be able to appoint one member of the school committee to the Climate Action Planning Committee. So if you're interested in serving that, if you could just shoot me an email, that would be great. Seems like a good initiative. And then, also the school committee will be doing office hours tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Same Zoom link as usual. We'll post it again on Facebook. Does anyone else in the committee have any other communications? Okay, not seeing any. 8.1 is to hear an update on the work of the equity team. Dr. LaBilla, good to see you.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to be here this evening to share an update of the incredibly hard work that's been going on this year, our inclusion working group. And so what I'll do is I will share my screen and a brief presentation just to give an overview. And I also will share towards the end a little bit of a surprise on the website that launched just last week. So just bear with me one moment. Okay. So just to begin, we thought it would make sense to just, for the sake of the committee and those listening in, to really go back to the beginning, review our mission, our definition of educational equity, our vision of equity, and most importantly, why we feel this work is really important. The mission of the Hingham Public Schools is to provide challenging and comprehensive educational programs in a safe, supportive environment, enabling all students to develop the knowledge and skills necessary for success as both local and global citizens. Now, in that, our team has defined educational equity as the shared responsibility of all members of our school community to address opportunity gaps that exist within our society and impact our students' ability to reach their full potential. Well, beyond the definition, we also talked about what does it look like when environment that does focus and really celebrates equity. And that is an environment, a vision really of regardless of student background, experience, or knowledge, Hingham Public School students will be provided opportunities and resources to develop socially, emotionally, and academically in a safe, supportive, and enriching and bias-free environment. And I think that the latest work that we've done, and that really, this stems out of our with the RISE program out of Harvard, is on the why. Why is this work important? A diverse, equitable, welcoming, and inclusive community is central to our mission, and we know that we know varied perspectives generate better ideas to solve the complex problems of a rapidly changing, increasingly interconnected world. We believe all members of our community, students, parents, guardians, caregivers, faculty, and staff deserve the right to be fully seen, authenticated, and affirmed. This sense of belonging is a basic human need, which must be met in order for any member to reach their full potential. We also recognize that each member of our school community has different needs, experiences, and opportunities, and by exploring these differences, we gain collectively understanding, compassion, and empathy for others. Just a quick review. The Equity and Inclusion Working Group was formed back in the fall of 2019 and was charged with conducting an equity audit of the district's operations, programs, and services. Again, the purpose of the audit was to better inform our multi-year equity and inclusion plan that will be announced this coming June. These are the members for this school year. We have Ness Carenti, the school committee rep to the working group, Dr. Vinnis, our student services director, Carol Perez, our METCO director, Mary Eastwood, the principal at South Elementary, Erica Pollard, our director of world languages, Boris Samaroff, teacher at Plymouth River, Heather Anderson, teacher at Foster, Melissa Goldman, teacher at Hingham Middle School, Carolyn Bixby at Foster, Kara Roth at Hingham High School, Lindsay Troy at Hingham Middle School, and Jenna Nelson at Hingham Middle School. The work that's been done so far by the Equity and Inclusion Working Group has been to define equity, develop the vision, and to establish the why that we just reviewed a few minutes ago. We also have conducted a SWOT analysis, which examines the district's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, with feedback from our leadership team, district faculty and staff, the district special education parent advisory council, and the district's parent-teacher organizations to inform the group as the work in the district begins. We also established our initial leadership team training with Kathy Lopes from METCO. We organized and ran a summer and school year book groups focused on different topics of diversity and equity, as well as the completion over the summer of an elementary classroom library audit and book selection process, as well as implicit bias training for all of our faculty and staff back in March of 2020. The work that's currently underway is we are working to conducting a series of courageous conversations with affinity groups in the district again, overseeing the district's equity audit, and we meet regularly to discuss the implementation and rollout strategy relative to the equity and inclusion plan. We also have the Office of Student Services, who is working with DESE on disproportionality planning, as we have been cited by the state as having disproportionate representation of students of color in our special education programs. In terms of the audit, this is just a brief update of where we are in the process of the audit. So this, again, just to bring the committee back, we're exploring 12 dimensions of resource equity. 12. And currently right now, what's underway are courageous conversations with affinity groups. As of right now, we have about 82 volunteers. We put out a letter to the community just a few weeks ago soliciting volunteers. And as of just the end of last week, we had 82 faculty, staff, alumni, current students, administrators, and parents who have agreed to come in and talk to us about issues and about their experiences within our organization, so we can be sure that we're controlling and really looking deeply at all of our potential blind spots and areas for improvement as we focus on the audit. Again, the Courageous Conversations is not only to hear feedback from members in our community, but to most importantly ensure that the areas that we're doing deep dives in with the audit are the things that people are experiencing or might be experiencing difficulty with in our community. So again, the Courageous Conversations are underway, and those of you who have signed up should be getting invitations shortly to begin those conversations with members of the Equity and Inclusion Working Group. For this school year, we're asking some key questions in the audit. The first is, do all students have access to upper level and advanced courses at the secondary level? For this question in particular, because of the complexity involved here, we actually contracted out to data consultants. Ness and I are actually meeting with them on Wednesday to see their first round of analysis. So they're actually running statistical models that look at sort of the entry requirements into upper level courses. Using our student data, we're looking at students over time who enter into upper level classes to determine their outcome, as well as the membership in those upper level courses based on various demographic variables that we've identified for closer analysis. And so that's the one that we actually contracted out for, again, because of the complexity and the amount of data. They're actually looking at about a decade of data that's housed within our student information system. And again, we're looking at a longitudinal analysis here to determine sort of who has access and what happens once they're into those upper level courses at the secondary level. We're also looking at whether all students receive extra time during the school day in any subjects they need additional support in. Do all students have access to additional out-of-school opportunities to help meet their learning needs? Do all students have access to an effective response to intervention or RTI process? Do all students have access to effective early intervention supports? Do all students have access to social and emotional supports? Do all students have access to a rigorous and unbiased special education identification process? And do all students have access to a rigorous and unbiased Section 504 identification process? So again, these are the areas for the areas of focus for the audit for this school year. And the results of these questions will be presented as a part of the district's equity and inclusion plan, as well as outlining the first year implementation as we look ahead to the 21-22 school year. I also want to talk to the committee a little bit about some partnerships that we've just established as a part of the work. And the first is the Harvard RIDES partnership. So RIDES stands for Reimagining Integration for Diverse and Equitable Schools. It's housed out of the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and we are currently in the program, in the training program, with teams from Scituate, Marblehead, Weston, and Swampscott. The leaders of the program or the training with the districts is Dr. Anissa Monte-Jackson and Dr. Lee Title. What I will note here is Dr. Anissa Monte-Jackson is our district coach as we move from the planning stages to the implementation stages. So Dr. Monte-Jackson, we're working with the district and our leadership team as our equity inclusion plan rolls out. The focus in the rides training, because some people will say to us, why are you doing it this way, or why are you looking at these particular pieces and not others? And that really goes back to our training, right? So we are being trained by Dr. Armonte Jackson and Dr. Title over at Harvard on a systematic cycle of improvement. And there is 6 components of this cycle. The first is to talk honestly, I'm sorry for my spelling error there, to talk openly and honestly about inclusion and create a vision of equity, to collect data to see how current reality compares against the vision, to diagnose underlying causes of any gaps between vision and reality, plan 1 or more initiatives that systematically address these gaps, and then to act, to implement specific initiatives with support and accountability, and then to reflect, to assess the impacts and the processes of work, and then again to plan the next cycle. One of the things that is really being made clear to us within our training is that what we're establishing is an ongoing cycle of data collection, analysis, implementation, and then reflection. And then once we determine where we are after the first round of implementation, we go back again to again look at more data, to assess the extent to which that data matches reality, and then to design and implement programming to bring reality into the vision. This is the graphic that just sort of talks about the initial and continued development of a personal and team equity culture, or PTEC as we're learning to call it. And that's, again, personal and team equity culture. And this just shows that improvement cycle that I just talked about just a few minutes ago. The other thing that will be coming more in the fall as we move to implementation is we've been doing a lot of work on understanding systematic oppression and the 4 I's of oppression. And so I won't spend a ton of time here, as this is more of an overview training, but the committee will sort of receive more formal training once this sort of program rolls out in the fall and our plan is ready for release. But we're learning how to understand and how to work with issues of internalized oppression. So these are issues of implicit bias, they're unconscious bias, internalized privilege, and internalized oppression. We're also looking at interpersonal oppression. This is where we get into issues like macroaggression, microaggression, or stereotype threats. We're also looking at institutional oppression, or really the implicit and explicit policies and practices of our school system and the extent to which they might be adding layers into what people of color or people with differences might be experiencing within our culture. And finally, we're learning about ideological oppression. This is where we get into issues of race and racism, privilege, white supremacy, whiteness, systematic oppression, structural racism, etc. And one of the biggest benefits is helping us really conceptualize the work we have to do across the 4 I's of systematic oppression to ensure that we're looking at internalized, interpersonal, institutional, and ideological with any of the work that we do in the district. I also want to talk a little bit about the Suffolk University Center for Restorative Justice Partnership. So let's start at the beginning. What is restorative justice? So restorative justice is essentially a theory of justice that focuses on mediation and agreement rather than punishment. In this model, we're looking at offenders accepting responsibility for harm and then working to make restitution or repairing a damaged relationship. The concept has actually been around for hundreds of years. We see it most predominantly in sort of Native American cultures throughout the Americas. In the late 20th century, it really began to gain traction in the United States and other countries as various groups sought to improve the effectiveness of the criminal justice system. The application for restorative justice and restorative practices has its roots in the criminal justice system, but the application has now been brought over into application really in school-based settings. School application is actually used to focus on the concept of community and the need to repair relationships due to bias, behavior, or violations of the school code of conduct. Again, we've been saying all along as we do this work that we want to be calling people in to the conversation, not calling them out. So part of that has to do with focusing on not right or wrong, not I did or I didn't do it, but accepting responsibility that my behavior has impacted the community and may have impacted this relationship. And so while it's not about punishment, it's about accepting responsibility as a good citizen for your role in causing harm to others, and then working to really repair and restore that relationship. And again, the focus here is on the relationship, on mediation and agreement, rather than on punishment. The restorative practices in a school-based application really focus on building healthy relationships between teachers and students. We're hoping to reduce, prevent, and improve harmful behavior, and that includes instances of bias. We're looking to repair harm and restore positive relationships. We're also hopeful that this will be the pathway to resolve conflict, to hold individuals and groups accountable, and to address and discuss the needs of the school community as it relates to issues of bias all around us. The partnership is with the Center for Restorative Justice at Suffolk University, and we're working to train our school and district administrators on the implementation of restorative practices within all district schools. The district has determined, again, the use of restorative practices to be essential to the ongoing work of combating issues of bias and discrimination in our school community. Begin our training actually on June 4th with the entire leadership team together, and we'll continue with in-depth trainings during two scheduled two-day summer institutes during the summer of 2021. There's one in July and the one in August, and the team can sort of pick either of the two, but we do have one session that's more focused for secondary application and another training that's more focused on elementary application. A part of our partnership also gives us coaching hours throughout the school year. So again, when confronted with issues of bias or discrimination or harassment, our administrators will have the benefit of live coaching with the Suffolk staff on how to apply the concept of restorative practices and restorative justice to the situation at hand. We're also looking to partner with Suffolk on the implementation of a number of professional development opportunities starting next year for our teachers on a variety of processes related to restorative justice and its application in the classroom. We're really looking at this group of teachers who will go into these trainings as our early adopters to help us provide feedback and adjustments to our implementation of the model during the 21 to 22 school year. So even our teachers and educators will be given pathways to learn about restorative practices and how we can apply it in our classrooms, again, to create more diplomatic and egalitarian learning environments. In terms of next steps, we are currently looking at reviewing district policies and procedures. I think Chairwoman Nee mentioned that at the last meeting, that as the committee works on their policy handbook, we'll also be looking at updating the school and the student parent handbooks across the district. We're also currently researching bias policies and or refining existing work. And what I mean by that is the district has existing civil rights, discrimination, and harassment and bullying policies in place. And what we're trying to identify is sort of the intersection between all of those as it relates to bias-based policies. So that work is underway. We're also looking at professional development planning. So again, I just talked a little bit about through the Suffolk partnership, bringing into the district restorative practices, training for teachers. And Dr. Vinnis is working in the special education realm with assessment skills and identifying and developing within our assessors greater cultural competency to understand the strengths and limitations of normed reference tests, working with certain populations of kids and teenagers. We're also working on a communication strategy for ongoing management of any issues and concerns, as well as our rollout of our programming and data collection, review, synthesis, and equity and inclusion plan development for year one. So while we have accomplished a lot, we do have a lot more ahead of us as we work toward implementation. At this point, I'll come out of the share screen and take questions and comments, but I do want to just let the committee know, sorry, I came out of share screen a little too soon. I just want to let you know that just last week, if you navigate to our district website, you'll notice the three major tiles. The first is on district reopening and all the COVID resources. The second is a general welcome. And the new tile on the right is our equity and inclusion webpage. So if you click into this page, members in the community can find a lot more information about all the things that were just covered, as well as a place where we have a repository for our definition, our vision, our why statement, an update on the audit, and you can actually click into all the dimensions of resource equity that we're looking at and look at the exact questions we're asking. You can also go down here and look at this year, what we're looking at and how we're looking at it relative to the dimension of equity, the diagnostic question that we're asking, how we're examining district operations, how we're examining impact at the school level, impact at the student level, as well as the data sources that we're looking at as a part of this investigation. You'll also find more information and links, to the Harvard Rise partnership. So again, that gives you a link out to that website. You can learn more about that, as well as the Suffolk University and Restorative Justice partnership that we're partnering with for next school year. Again, you can click there to learn more about that center at Suffolk University. We also have updated the website to include all the materials from the March Professional Development, as well as my presentation, as well as Johnny Cole, who was our keynote speaker, who was the Director of Equity and Inclusion for the Lexington Public Schools. You also have copies here for the community of the SWOT analysis results. The only one that we're still waiting on releasing is the one from the PTOs and the CPAC that were just done this year, and those will be forthcoming. You also have information on our Courageous Conversation series, tells you a little bit more information. We've also provided resources to talk about race and racism, trauma and support. Apologies for the header text, those shouldn't be there. We have also sort of provided a one-stop shop. You know, one of the things that we can hear sometimes is there's, quote, you know, nothing there now. And so what we have done is assembled all of the district's policies, the school committee's policies as they exist now, that deal with all issues of civil rights in the district. If anyone's looking to find out where I could get the language on harassment, we've provided, again, text of all of this committee's policies on this one website, as well as provided links to some free bystander trainings that our faculty and staff are participating in. Most notably Hollaback. I participated in their anti-Asian, how to be an ally and combat issues of anti-Asian hate and sort of negative behavior. So it was really well done, and they offer a host of bystander trainings or other ways for people in the community. Even though if you feel like it might not impact you, they can help you how to be a more effective partner to BIPOC people and people experiencing discriminatory behavior. So I will come up for air, I'll stop there, and I'll be happy to take any questions or comments from the committee.
Yeah, I just want to second your comments on the Hollaback training. I just took the anti-Asian training, the anti-bias training last week, and it was really well done. I really was impressed and want to sign up for some more. So.
Yeah, they're great. They're great.
Yeah, no, thank you for all of that work, and it's very exciting to have a website now for the equity work, because you're doing a lot, so it should be easy for people to find. Does anyone on the committee have any questions? Michelle?
Thank you. I do. Thanks so much for that, Jamie. Really appreciate it. I know in a year that it has been not only the normal day-to-day operations of the school district continue to go on, and add on top of that all the COVID-related issues and things that needed to be dealt with. I want to thank all the people who are participating in the task force, because it is important work for the community, and I know something that this committee in particular has a very vested interest in. So thank you for all that work that you're doing. I just had a quick question on the Courageous Conversations. Are students involved in those conversations? And can you what ages? Is it all students? How are you?
So it's secondary, so really 6 to 12. And they both of the schools sent out communications to the students to recruit. We actually have a number of students already signed up. At the elementary level, they're being invited based on membership in an affinity group. So at the secondary level, they're self-selecting, where at elementary, they're being approached to see if they want to participate. And so for the first round, we're going to determine whether that elicits enough in terms of volunteers, that is. And so we'll sort of see where we are. But there is a space for students to come and share their experiences with us as well. We're working on who's the best person to have that conversation. So one of the things we're very aware of is that when you bring people into an environment and ask them to be vulnerable and talk about really, in some instances, traumatic experiences for them, they need to be assured that they're in a safe environment. And so we're looking at, for example, with our elementary students, a trusted adult is there. When we think about our high school students, we're actually working on recruiting some alumni to actually help us out with some of those conversations. They can see people who kind of have the same experience as them and not just see teachers or adults, right? Because in some instances, it might be a person in that position of power who has actually not been great with their behavior. So we're being really thoughtful in terms of who we recruit and who's the best person to then facilitate that conversation, so that we hear, really open experiences, right? People, we're here in an open format, people share their experience with us, and that's another reason why the groups are we're trying to keep them very small. And actually, I have Erica and Ness, who are both on the team with us, and Suzanne, who are all going to be facilitating their own. And actually, Erica had her first round of courageous conversations with some students, actually. So, Erica, do you want to share a little bit with Michelle about how that went from your perspective, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I actually participated in a couple of these conversations, first with the METCO students at the middle school and at the high school, and then as more of an observer and note taker with some female students at the high school. And to echo what Dr. Labilwa said, it's been really, really productive, and we've come out of it with some really interesting insights. And I agree that a part of that dynamic has been identifying who's the right person to have each conversation, who is somebody that these students will trust and feel okay being open in front of. And I think so far we've managed to strike that balance with, a trusted teacher in each group. Unfortunately, I'm in a place now where the kids don't know me as well as they used to, so I'm no longer that trusted adult for many of them, but having somebody in the room that they already know and feel comfortable with, I think has gone a long way to making those conversations work.
Great, thank you. Very helpful.
Does anyone else in the committee have any questions? Liza?
Thank you for all the comprehensive information and everything put on the website. That's really great. I know that probably took a lot of work to get that done. So one of my question or a suggestion is, when we're talking about communication strategy, with both restorative justice and the outcomes of the equity training, we're changing. Our goal is really to change the culture of Hingham. And so a big part of that, our district it's a triangle of, or it's a three-legged stool of students, staff, and parents and families. And so what are we thinking about, or can you think about, how do we educate families and parents in a deep and productive way of this new culture? And, in particular with restorative justice, parents have their own view of how a punishment is given. Restorative justice is a very different way of addressing a challenging situation, or a dilemma, as Jamie terms it, of their child. And so can we think about how we start communicating with families in a different way, rather than, just not just sending an email out, but is it on, back to school night, that every presentation the principal gets is maybe an overview of the work that's coming? Can we have Suffolk provide, or maybe our own people provide professional development workshops for parents? Can we actually require parents to do something and attend something or check something off that they're educated? That we really need to engage people in this. This year we've had a lot of engagement, more than we ever have, but it it would be great if we had that kind of engagement in this positive activity rather than the type, this year people were, looking at every detail of what we were up to. But this type of equity work and the restorative justice, we really need, it's going to be a challenge, but how do we deeply engage them so that they participate and they welcome it and they're on board with it and they're understanding it? It's a big challenge, but I think for it to be for the whole thing to be successful, we need to get them on board.
100%, Liza. That's great feedback, and we have considered all of those options. I think the other thing to mention is on a very small scale, we've already started making some shifts and transitions, and we're doing it very slowly and very carefully. And then the people involved are then being asked for their feedback, right? So what we're trying to implement, there's a conversation actually tomorrow around some student behavior that we're addressing in a new way. And we've already dealt with a staff issue in a new way. And both of those, the first conversation was very productive. It left, again, I think the biggest shift, to Liza's point, and again, this will come when we're ready to launch. Like, so the initial training is only on June 4. We have the in-depth trainings with Suffolk. So your point, be open. I wouldn't be surprised if there were training sessions, if it was mentioned, and mini workshops were offered for parents to join and learn a little bit more about the model. Because the biggest difference, and I think we're seeing, I agree, people on both sides of the issue have very strong opinions about how it should be managed. And what we're trying to say, and Ness knows this well because she works with me often on these topics, we're here to protect the children. We are here for the young people. And we exist as a part of an ecosystem of the community, but my major focus is on kids. And when we look at their behavior, we know that it's either telling us a story that they don't have the words to manifest yet, or they haven't learned why something, we take the position kids are inherently good, right? And that their behavior is either telling us a story, trying to communicate to us something they can't verbalize, or they just haven't learned why something may or may not be appropriate. And so by changing the conversation from you're right, I'm wrong, you're in trouble, I'm not, to it's not about right or wrong, okay? What it's about is the impact that your behavior has had on this community. Because what we also learned through the work is I cannot get into, Nez Carenti's brain and change the way she thinks or feels about something. What I can do, though, right, is help Ness understand that she is a member of a community, that her words have power, and when she uses them the wrong way, it can harm people. And it's not about us saying to Ness, you're wrong. It's about you have a role in how this other person now feels, right? And that's a whole different, and the reality is you damage the relationship, and what are you gonna do to fix it? Right, a very different conversation than here's your 5-day suspension and come back in 5 days. So you're absolutely right. It's a huge culture shift. And actually the equity team, again, one of the reasons we're trying to take the work thoughtfully and slowly is because we also recognize we want it to be effective, right? We understand the community more than sometimes people think that we do. And then that understanding is where that sort of very thoughtful, very slow rollout comes in. It's not because we're not eager to get the work done. One of the biggest quotes, and this is my last point, I promise, we were working with Dr. Amante Jackson, and we were listening to one of her keynotes at MIT. And one of the things that struck me, and I literally paused the recording, got a pen and a paper, wrote it down, is what she said to us was, urgent people with no skill do harm. I'll say that one more time. Urgent people with no skill do harm. So it's one thing to say, this is a problem, right? I don't disagree. It's another thing to say, now here's the skill you need to improve it. And that's where culturally as an organization, we are building our skill set so that when we get into this work more head on, we have the skills to not do harm. And that's really paramount. And that's where restorative practices really, we feel like is the entry point for us to have these conversations and not have it be a right or wrong. Now, that doesn't say we throw out the discipline code, right? The discipline code isn't going away, but it will be revamped with this other layer of conversation on top of it. So you're absolutely right. We're going to have to do a lot of work to get everybody in the community to understand this new approach, because you'll hear a lot like my child was harmed. What are you doing about it, right? And the conversation really needs to be, we're working for both people to understand their role in the relationship and how to build the steps to improve. The other big thing is forgiveness is a process. It's not an act, right? So the reality is, as we have to work to forgive people, and that's going to take time and understanding for everybody. Culturally, to your point, that is a huge shift for us. So that's why we're taking it really slowly, really thoughtfully. But I really appreciate that feedback. Those are the very things that we've been talking about of how to make the rollout as effective as possible.
And we did it in the elementary schools with the toolbox program, and that was very effective. And so I'm sure we can do it again with this. So that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else on the committee have any questions on this? I just had a couple of them. So one question was about the alumni who are participating, and you mentioned using some as facilitators. How are we recruiting them? Is there a way to get the word out? I don't know if you're just reaching out to specific people, or is there a way to make sure that it's available to anyone who's interested?
We can always make it broader, Carrie. We've been working on known existing alumni networks. For example, we have, and Carol's as a METCO alum from Hingham actually knows and has connections to the Hingham METCO alumni group. So we're looking at sort of alumni groups that are formed. But we're also open to sort of other strategies of how to sort of really widen that catchment of more people to participate. But beyond sort of certain groups that we know exist, we haven't done more beyond sort of the known groups.
No, I was just wondering about maybe publicizing it in the Anchor or the Journal or something like that, because it seems like we might be able to get some valuable information from people who aren't part of the targeted groups, but like who've just been through our school system and have some good feedback for it.
So Carol Britton-Myers and I have been like 2 steps in the night. We were actually supposed to work on a big feature as a part of the equity launch. So do be on the lookout for that, because we have been trying to partner to get something out actually into the Anchor. And we had it set up a few months ago, and then one thing led to another. So we've been trying to reconnect. But I would anticipate as we launch to have a featured story, hopefully with Carol in the Anchor.
Yeah.
Any other need outlet that would like to participate too.
That's great for the work, and then I think for recruiting people too. Let's see, and then the restorative justice, I really like that. I agree with Liza. It's going to be a huge shift for our community. I like the focus on education rather than punitive. So will this be part of our bullying prevention plan? Like, how would that interact with that?
Yeah, so it would be a part of everything, right? So it would be sort of the overlay to everything. What we would have to be careful of in all of this, right? And I want to be really clear when we talk, it's not, and I think I mentioned it earlier, by going this route, we're not getting rid of the traditional means we have to apply discipline, right? So I think with your point, Carrie, this takes the strategies that we try to use through like mediation and bring it to another level, like with more formalized training, more formalized supports. And the biggest part for us in year one, I think, is going to be the coaching, so that when you leave the training session and a real issue emerges, you have a resource to call to help you process and work that through. But I do see this approach, right, that the focus on the community and the damage to the community really being paramount in all of our work, regardless if it's bullying or harassment or discrimination. It's really going to be housed on people being made to be accountable for their behavior and recognize how that behavior has impacted others. And I think it has a great nexus to bullying as well.
Great, thank you. I don't see anyone else on the committee. I see Katie Sutton's hand. If you could just unmute yourself and.
Hi, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Labilla and the whole committee. This is really exciting. I'm really, really, bravo. I'm glad to see this progress. I'm really excited to see Dr. Amante Jackson involved with this. She is hands down the best speaker I've ever heard speak about this subject. I went to a conference where she spoke, and then we broke into speaker sessions, and there were like 100 speakers from all over the country, and you could go to any of them. And I just followed her like a duck into the next room because she was so good, and I just wanted more. So to Liza's point, if there are opportunities for the community to hear her speak, if she comes to Hingham, if she's speaking for Hingham, I would just suggest to any parent to go and listen, because she's very accessible, she's lovely. And so I'm thrilled that she's our representative. And I'm just really grateful that this work is moving forward. And, you know, as you know, Jamie, I'm Dr. LaBilwa, I'm happy to help in any way that we can. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And I won't give it away anything yet, but Dr. Amante Jackson is our coach, and we're working with her on a very special something. So we'll tell you more about that in time.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's great. Dr. Austin?
Thank you. I raised my hand. It's one of the first times I've ever done that, so thank you. I just want to say thank you to Dr. LaBilwa and to the members of the equity team. I think that if you recall, when I came, this was so important to me, and the issue of equity and being able to move forward with that is incredibly important work. And I just want to say thank you, and a huge thank you to all the work that's being done by everyone on that team. So great work so far, and I continue to look forward to the things you'll produce in the future and how we change the culture together. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next is 8.2 to receive an update on the fiscal year 21 operating budget. Ferris, I think this is you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Am I coming through loud and clear, I hope? Okay, good, thanks. I'm take a minute and I'll share my screen and put this document up there to just kind of go over the forecast a bit. So you're seeing the Hingham Public Schools FY21 budget forecast as of April 21, I hope, right?
Sorry, it's very small.
Okay, let's see if we can make that a little bit bigger. Is that getting any better?
Yep.
Okay. Is it visible now so people can see it?
Yep.
Good. So this is as of April 21, and it's a snapshot of the FY21 budget forecast. I'll skip down to the bottom here below to say, you know, so what I'm tracking right now is a negative $419,916. This is based on estimates. It's based on encumbrances. It's based on, it's based on filings that we've made with the Plymouth County CARES Act. There's also still additional filings in progress. So last time I presented like $1.9 million filed. We have filed another $528,000, but there's still additional filings in process. And as you know, all the filings would tend to reduce this number anyway. So I'm gonna start by saying that this number is not concerning to me because I do believe that we're manageable. I do believe that, you know, I'm very conservative in some of my estimates above, and I do believe that some POs are going to close out at poor estimates, and when I have estimates, so I'm not really concerned with the 419 right now. I do believe that we'll be able to bring in a budget at 0. So just going over the top here, I'll highlight a few of the particular areas. So you can see over here teachers with the 673,000 negative. That's really, a lot of that has to do with the FTK lost revenue that is actually getting charged to teachers now. Some remote teachers in there, and it's sort of offset by some employee churn because we don't, we may have like lower priced teachers in for, leaves of absence or something to that effect. You can see where the big numbers are showing up. So when you see the big numbers, that's not our typical operations, but that's the places where we've stuck these accounts so that we can more effectively track the COVID-19 type expenditures. But I mean, clearly you're going to see technology spend over $1.2 million, $1,252,000. Health services is another area where we have some testing and, some other services being provided by nurses, et cetera. So, that there is, negative of 251. Transportation, we're doing a lot of that on our own with at least 5 new buses. Also, we have bus monitors in there. We have a lot of items hitting into transportation because it was a sort of a good, clean place to place some of the numbers for good tracking possibilities. So there's 535. Coming down on the other things, I've got some reduced presumed activity for athletics. I don't think that's going to come in at the regular budget of 677. A lot of these numbers I have not changed from the past. Heating of the buildings is negative right now, but we've had a pretty good winter. So I haven't updated this number, but we've had a pretty good winter. So I'm not sure that we're going to be coming in at negative 143. So I think some money's going to be freeing up there as well. You look at the plant maintenance, it's 947. That's where all the PPE is, all the extra facilities things we've been doing to, the air quality testing, the cleaning, the labels, the extra cleaners, and the like of those type of people doing the extra cleaning during the day and stuff. Then the other, this 184 has to do with the additional rents that we're paying that, aren't normally in the budget. For example, Libby was not budgeted, but we still have the Traces building. But there's also that St. Jerome's is listed in here. So that's for the rent and for the expenses in order to make the building ready. So that rent's like 117 plus 50. So then if you look over here, when we look at sped instruction, Karen and I have changing our process. The budget shows some offset dollars for people, for MTRs, for spending on grants. We've sort of moved that money down here to tuitions. And the reason for that is because what we can do is we could save 9% of the money for MTRS. So we won't be paying MTRS on all those salaries and stuff. So we are allowed to use the tuition. So when you see this big offset, you sort of got to balance it against this big positive down here. It's a budgeting function for the most part. We're doing a lot of trips ourselves, plus some of the hybrid savings on transportation where they haven't been going all 5 days, so there's a little reduction there. Plus, too, if you recall, at the beginning of the year, we purchased a couple of new smaller vehicles. So, Patrick and his team have actually done an incredible job of sort of managing transportation. The capital, you see a positive 120, you see a positive 164 down here. That's sort of a misnomer, but it's just the way the numbers show, and I'm better off showing the numbers the way they come up in the budget because, as we know, a lot of the capital is sitting up in technology too, right? So capital could be dispersed amongst this whole budget, but we've placed these items into these particular accounts to make it more practical for tracking, so that we can file for the CARES reimbursements, and we have a good handle on where the expenses sit. So these are actual filings right now, the 2.5 million. We've still only received 787, or somewhere around there, 767. But Plymouth County, being assured, has hired new people so that they can kind of catch up on all the filings. And even though it's 2.5, there are additional things like there's a lot of labor we haven't put in. So those things we've put the real clean labor in, but we haven't put a lot of the maintenance workers, the extra hours and stuff like that, because we didn't want to intermingle that with some of the real big filings so that they don't hold up our money. But I do believe there's going to be several $100,000 more in that line too. And normally this time of the year in the budget, this time in the budget cycle, typically I would be closing purchase orders, but we're just getting back into school, so I'm not closing anything. So last time where you saw I was only negative 300,000, that's why I'm negative 400,000 now, because I haven't closed anything, because I can't. We need to let them get the stuff that the supplies and the tools and the equipment that they need in order to make sure that they're providing the best education we possibly can for the rest of the school year. So I'll probably keep those open. I'm going to keep those open at least for another month. So we're going to be, that should take me to the end of May, which is a lot longer than I did go. But I'm not worried that this number is negative. I do believe that I'm high. I know I'm high on testing. We haven't hit the run rate that I was there. And typically at the end of the year, a lot of the a lot of the purchase orders will be closing out empty as well. You know, if you wanted to, I'm not going to go over this in detail, but so here's the encumbrances that are in the POs, and here's my extra numbers. So, you know, you can kind of see where I've sort of added some extra numbers. Sometimes, like you see this big extra number, that has to do with, I am trying to make some accounting adjustments here because the reality is full day K has been encumbered against the full day K revolving account, but it's not being charged there. So that we have to make that correction and have the teachers correctly reflect, and then some of that will go away. But so what you can see is, so here's what we actually have purchase orders for, and then here's my estimates taking us to the remainder of the year. So this is where I'm saying I'm probably, you know, high conservative if you wanted to take other time to study it, but I won't go over it in detail now. And then this one here is another view. It's all of the same data, but you can kind of see, you know, where, let's see. You can kind of see, you know, where the accounts and these classifications, I have to force certain things. So, you know, you look at summer personnel, you know, it's not all personnel in here. It could be contract services, could be some other stuff, some of other special ed. So there's not a whole lot of categories, but you can kind of get a feel for, you know, where these variances are happening when you take a look at the variance here, and you see what's producing the actual variances within a category. So I won't go over that in a lot of detail either, but you know, it's available for you for your review. Lastly, I want to give you sort of, here's an update of the, I'm sorry, I put January 21, but I did make some updates for this for the 21st, April 21, you know, 4 months later. I should have changed that date. This is really as of April 21, and it has to do with, you know, with the estimates that I'm making. You know, the new stuff in here has to do with the tents, right? You know, the tents are not a minor cost, right? The tents are $75,000 for the high school and middle schools, you know, $50,000 for the elementaries. You know, and we are, there was a special grant that we got, not for tents, but, you know, that we have to spend between now and the end of June 30th. It was like about $120,000, so $125,000. So that just about covers the expense of the tent. So we're using that grant specifically for this. So you won't necessarily see that forecast in the budget material that I showed you because we're using a grant. And this shows you the individual CARES filings that we've done, and you know what those dates are, and gives you the total amount of $2,499,273. The remote teachers are included in here. The testing's included in here. I haven't gone back and adjusted a lot of these numbers, but you know, there's I do believe that my estimates are conservative. And aside from that, just in summary, I would just say that, you know, I do believe that this forecast is, you know, directionally correct, and that the negative balance that it's showing is not worrisome to me. That we'll certainly be able to bring this budget home at zero between now and June 30th. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. I don't know if, do you want to come out of the shared screen for a minute?
Sure.
Does anyone in the committee have any questions? Carlos?
John, you don't have to go back to the screen, but you know, I saw a number in front of capital there for $1,185,000 and some changes. What is that number? Is that for the new year?
For capital, $1,185,000.
Yep, it's right under 60 million. It's like a third.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, that's the that's actually, Carlos, that's the year-to-date expended and encumbered. So those are monies that we've actually spent already, because we had a budget of 1.3 million.
Correct.
So we've spent we've either spent or encumbered already. So we spent it, or we have the money reserved because we know we're going to spend it, of $1,185,562.
Thank you.
That's where you see that positive variance of 164,301, which is really a misnomer because the money is being spent, but it's sitting in another account where, even though we had it in our capital budget, it qualifies for COVID expenditures.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Anyone else in the committee have any questions? Any members of the public, if you could use the raise hand function if you have any questions about the budget. Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move on to the next agenda item, which is 9.1, to hear a report of the district seal of biliteracy results. And I think this is Erica Pollard.
Yeah, this is me, and Sherry has some slides that she's going to share with you. But I want to start just by thanking you for giving me the opportunity to share with you some of the really impressive achievements of our world language students. And these achievements that I'm going to outline for you are the result not only of some really hard work on the part of the students, but also years of hard work and really high quality instruction from our talented teachers K through 12. Sherry, if you'll advance to the next slide, I wanted to just start by giving a quick introduction to the history of the Seal of Biliteracy and Hingham's participation in it. We've been participating in this program since 2018. At that point, the Seal of Biliteracy was not officially recognized by the state legislature in Massachusetts. It was a pilot program run by a group called the Language Opportunity Coalition. So we participated in that pilot for a year, and in 2019, the Look Bill established the Seal of Biliteracy Awards in the state of Massachusetts as something that's endorsed by the state and sort of monitored by DESE. So it's become part of our reporting to the state at the end of each year. The first year of this sort of official participation in the Seal of Biliteracy was last year, and we were partway through our testing of students when schools closed in March. So we had managed to test all of our seniors last year and some groups of juniors before school closed, and we sort of had to pull things to a close. This year, we set a slightly more modest goal. We decided to test just one group of students, and we tested all of our seniors that are enrolled in what I would consider to be our senior level world language courses. So like Spanish 5, French 5, our AP language courses, and for Latin, it's Latin 4, and for Chinese, it's Chinese 4 or AP. So any of those sort of top level classes. On the next slide, you can see how students qualify for literacy. There are two aspects. They have to qualify by demonstrating their proficiency both in English and in a second language. The proficiency is measured on a scale that's published by the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, which is ACTFL. And students have to demonstrate their proficiency at the intermediate high level. As you can know that the image is very small, but the intermediate high level on that little graph that you see there. They demonstrate that proficiency by either scoring a score of 3 or higher on an advanced placement exam, a score of at least 5 on what we call a STAMP exam, which is an independent proficiency test for world language. And for Latin, we use a test that's called a LIRA, which tests Latin proficiency. They have to also demonstrate their proficiency in English, which they do generally through taking the ELA MCAS. Or for our ELL students, they can demonstrate their proficiency through the use of the access test. So a score of 4+ will get them labeled as proficient in English. So our next slide tells us how the kids did this year, and I can't say enough about how proud I am. We had one student receive the highest possible award. Sorry, I think that these advance click by click, but you could just put them all out there for me. So we had one student receive the Massachusetts Seal of Biliteracy with distinction, which is the highest level of recognition that the state offers. 41 students who received the Massachusetts Seal of Biliteracy, and then 45 students receiving the Language Opportunity Coalition's Bilingual Achievement Award, and 26 students receiving the Language Opportunity Coalition's Bilingual Attainment Award. So those are the sort of 4 different levels of qualification, and we had students qualify at all 4 levels, which is really great. I can't say enough about how difficult that seal of biliteracy with distinction is to achieve, so it's really very impressive. In the next couple of slides, I'm going to run through the results by language, and then I'll take any questions that you guys have. For Chinese, we have a very small group of students testing this year because we were only able to offer one senior level Chinese course, which was the AP course. So we have a very limited number of students participating, but we still had 2 students qualify for biliteracy attainment awards. And on the right-hand side there, you can see their average scores by domain. So the stamp test that we use to measure language proficiency in Chinese gives us a separate score for reading, writing, listening, and speaking, as well as an overall composite score. And I'm really hopeful that moving forward, this data is going to be really helpful for us in planning instruction, because we're going to be able to see how the students do on the various domains, and that's going to help us to focus our instruction and really help students to improve. In French, we have a much larger student pool, so we have 49 students testing in French this year. 3 of them qualified for the Seal of Biliteracy, 12 for the Bilingual Achievement Award, and 15 for the Bilingual Attainment Award. On the right-hand side there, that graph shows performance by domain and compares students in different courses. So we can see, for example, in blue, that's our all students, or all French students. AP French, it's in orange. Our level 3 or upper standard French 3 is in gray, and our honors French 5 is in yellow there. So you can see that students, all of our seniors across all the different courses that we offer, are performing at a really high level. Although I will say that the disparities in those scores fall in about the pattern that you would expect, with our AP students performing at the highest level, and things sort of moving from there. The Latin test is a little bit different from the other languages that we tested, because it only tests one domain. The focus of learning Latin is really on learning to read and interpret written Latin. So we don't have that same comparison of various domain scores in Latin. And similar to Chinese, we have a relatively small number of students testing in Latin. Latin and Chinese are our 2 smallest language programs. But you can see that a significant number of students are still qualifying for the Bilingual Achievement Award. And the chart on the right shows that overall score breakdown, so how many students performed at each score level. It's also worth mentioning that with Latin and Chinese, because those are programs that only exist at the high school, it is not surprising that we see fewer students qualifying in those languages, because they simply haven't had the same amount of exposure to the language that our students in French, and particularly our students in Spanish, have had. And that takes me to Spanish, which has by far the biggest number of students. We have 71 students who we tested in Spanish classes this year, in both our AP Spanish Literature course, our Honors Spanish 5 course, our Upper Standard Spanish 5 course, and we had a very, very small number of students who are seniors in the AP Language course who also tested this year. It's a small number because most of the students that take that class are juniors, and so they'll have an opportunity to either qualify through the AP exams that they take this spring, or when we test again in the fall. So in Spanish, we have our 1 student qualifying for the Seal of Biliteracy with distinction, 37 students qualifying for the Seal of Biliteracy, 20 for the Biliteracy Achievement Award, and 9 for the Biliteracy Attainment Award. And if you had a chance to look at the report that I sent, that I asked Sherry to include in your materials, there was an error in the chart on the right-hand side, but it's been corrected here. And similar to how we saw in the French classes, the blue represents all students. Our Honors Spanish 5 are there in the orange, followed by our Upper Standard Spanish 5, and our AP Literature students in the yellow there. So this shows us sort of across languages some trends that are not surprising, but are still helpful for planning instruction, particularly that our students have really, really strong reading skills, followed by very strong listening skills, but need a little bit more. I mean, their writing and speaking scores are still quite good, but those are the areas where it seems to me that we'll be focusing our attention on really teaching kids to expand their speech, to say as much as they can, and we'll work with kids on strategies to do that. And I'm hopeful that we'll see even better results going forward. So, anyone have any questions?
Well, thank you, and congratulations to all of these students, and to you and to the staff for all the work you've done with them. That's really impressive. Does anyone in the committee have any questions? Not seeing any. Any members of the public? Do you have any questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any there either. Thank you very much. That was it's great news.
Thanks so much. I'm so proud to be able to share it with you.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't have a better advocate for world languages than Erica. So
It's amazing. You did a great job, Erica. Thank you so much for highlighting that work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I conclude your report of the math curriculum. Mr. Jewett?
Hey everybody, thanks for having me. Anyone need a brain break before we get rolling here? I know it's been a long meeting, so I'll start by prefacing, well, actually, first off, congratulations to Erica. I do want to actually say that, and to any of her teachers who may still be on. Again, it does kind of always fall back on the hands of the teachers. So if anyone of those foreign language teachers still on the meeting, congratulations to you as well. It's a great testament to the work you've done. So keep it up, especially in a year that's been so hard. To get some really excellent news is fantastic. So appreciate that. So I'm here, obviously, to share our program review. This was something that was to happen last year, but we're actually postponed it, and so you guys are lucky enough to be getting it tonight. So it'll actually be a 5-year review instead of a 4-year review. So it's sort of a unique situation here. I know, and I'd actually will preface the start of this for the committee, that I know we sort of asked, you guys sort of talked about this idea of, potentially changing up how we do the program reviews and thinking about sort of a goal-oriented thing, shortening some of the presentations, etc. So I know in the past, I mean, this is a presentation that's typically been an hour and a half. That's not my intention this evening. So I'm definitely paring that back. The presentation that you guys, the report you received, clearly, however, was quite lengthy and a lot to take in. So your feedback back to us directors, I think, after maybe I present tonight, would be valuable in terms of how you want us to proceed long term. Just kind of continuing on with that guidance. I think it's something that all the directors have been talking about, and so just to plant that in your ear now is something to consider as I'm presenting, and then we have those discussions for me for the next 4 years, but for all the other directors, we'll have some guidance for proceeding as well. So what I'm going to do is, I don't want to rehash everything that was in that 80-page presentation, but there are also audience members who obviously might be interested in what we have to say. So I will go through the major highlights of the program, talk about some strengths, some challenges, and our goals for moving forward, and then obviously open up to questions from you guys. But I will try and go through it quickly. I won't get into as much detail that's into the report. You guys clearly have that and all the appendices. So if you do have questions, for sure, because I went through something quickly, we'll circle back at the end. And then for the audience members who are still home, the families in particular that are watching, if you have questions for me, please feel free to reach out. We can talk. A lot of times your questions sort of turn into individual questions. So I'm more than happy to discuss the program and how it may apply to your child, outside of this forum for the long term. So anyway, starting with our K through 6 program, we're an everyday math school. We have been since 2007. We were originally in the everyday math program. We transitioned over to everyday math for some sort of between 2014 and 16. We waited after the initial frameworks changed in 2011. Everyday math didn't change their program right away. Hingham in particular was part of group that provided a lot of information to the Everyday Math program about some of our concerns. We're a school that they actually like to highlight when they're discussing schools that use Everyday Math. We've had great success with it. And so they were very amenable to hearing our feedback back in 2012, 2013, and a lot of the changes that we were hoping to see in the program actually came about. But for now, it's appropriate line to the 2017 frameworks. It promotes number sense in the base 10 system, which is really a cornerstone of elementary math. It embeds those habits of mind, the standards of mathematical practice, making sense of problems, persevering through difficult problems, looking for repeated patterns and structures, constructing viable arguments. So it embeds those standards into the lessons, which is tremendously valuable. And in particular, a lot of those come up in those open response 1 and 2 day lessons that happen in every unit. In those units, students defend their own answers and learn to critique the reasoning of others. Again, really good habits. And I was thinking about the toolbox training that Liza had mentioned, and sort of that idea of teaching children to critique other students at a young age and to do it appropriately. And how do you balance that? And how do you say, you're right or you're wrong, and do it with tact and care and thought of how other people feel. And so anyway, that's sort of part of those open response piece. And then another piece that I didn't mention here, sort of that idea of there's a lot of concrete to representational to abstract, which is a really valuable approach for elementary math in terms of helping students develop those understandings at a young age. So that's sort of our main program. And then we've always maintained our own basic fact policy. That policy is aligned with the frameworks as well and has adjusted as the frameworks adjusted, but in general is the same practices. And then we also brought in Reflex Math last year as a way to sort of look at another alternative to working on basic fact policy. For us, learning facts is equivalent to sort of that basic literacy component that you might hear in ELA. And so we piloted it last year. We've been using it this year as well. And then this year's been kind of tricky because it's a computer-based gameplay type of program. And in some ways that's great for this year, but I know for many kids, we're also trying to reduce some of the screen time outside of school. So it's a balance. I think next year really will be our third year. We'll really invest the time and value into whether we're getting what we should be out of that program and look at the data. As we move into the middle school, our grade 6 group is heterogeneously grouped, but we do offer a couple different programs. We have the Title I Math Lab, which is new, and that typically supports around 80 students or so with push-in and pull-out support. And then we have the grade 6 math enrichment course, which we had lost for a couple years in, 2012, 13-ish, and have been able to sort of reestablish and have ever since. So that also tends to serve about 80, 85 students each year as well. The program itself from 7 through 12, again, high school is pretty straightforward. Algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, pre-calc, calculus. There are other iterations that students can take. But where our program is particularly unique is in the grade 7 and grade 8 sequences. And I will spend more time sort of diving into this a little bit, talking about the accelerated college prep program as we move forward. But in grade 7, we have 3 different options. We have an honors pre-algebra, a level 3 pre-algebra, and then level 3 math 7. And I think what's really important to understand here is that the level 3 math 7 course is the state frameworks course. That is actually the course that most students should be in. And then we have 2 options for accelerating students at different sequences. One of the ways we'd like to kind of explain it with parents is that picturing you have 3 children. You have a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 7-year-old. Your 12-year-old is your middle child, but that 12-year-old is much closer to the 14-year-old in age. It's the same with the pre-algebra. That pre-algebra class is very much much closer to that honors pre-algebra class. but it really is a tool to open up our accelerated college prep course, and again, I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then in grade 8, again, we have 4 different levels. And the 3 levels, what I'll talk about a little bit more too is sort of, we have a growth model in general. We really do not want to shut any doors. We want to give kids as many different opportunities and meet as many kids as possible where they are at middle school. And they really are just, they're changing so much and their brains are developing so quickly that there's a lot of need to kind of try and find these different spots for kids that are appropriate in the moment that keep doors open as long as possible into high school when they tend to settle into a course sequence, usually freshman or sophomore year. But again, what's important to understand is that no one decision sort of, you can kind of see how it played out in grade 8. Depending, if you were in level 3 pre-algebra in 7th grade, you could end up in algebra 1 quadratic, you could end up in math 8 with algebra, you could actually end up in honors algebra 1 as well. The kids really kind of end up in multiple different spots. The thing to note, and again, I don't like our nomenclature. I know Liza in particular doesn't like it either, and we've talked about this in the past. This was one of our goals for this year, but it got washed out with COVID and will probably be a goal for next year. Math 8 with algebra is actually the normal math class that every 8th grader in the state would take, college prep. You know, that's the standards-based course. Our Math 8 course teaches almost the same material as Math 8 with algebra, but we put a little extra emphasis on graph lines, solving equations, working with fractions, working with integers, all those skills that are essential to be successful in Algebra 1, and Algebra 1 really opens up the rest of high school. So in Math 8, we find much smaller class sizes. That's typically where you might see class sizes around 15 many years. And we'll take out 4 or 5 things that we know will be retaught in Algebra 1 that, again, really just allow us to slow down the pace a little bit more and give students as much attention as possible. It's part of sort of supporting kids who may be struggling a little bit, needing to find a place to get back on their feet and make sure they're in a good position going forward for Algebra 1. And then also sort of in that same vein, a lot of the Math 8 students are in Math 8 prep. And then some of the level 3 Math 7 students are in Math 7 prep. And those are every other day math classes that we've typically been able to support about, you know, with our staffing, typically been able to support 25-ish kids per year in those 2 programs. There's a lot of hope that with, you know, new HCSS program coming in, we'll be able to sort of restructure how we do that, provide more support for more students. It might provide us an opportunity to collapse Math 8 back into Math 8 with algebra and sort of look at that whole program a little bit differently, but that'll take us a couple of years to sort of unpack and figure out how that's all going to play out. And I think what's important, the reason I sort of focused on this part of the 7 through 12 program is that by developing these pathways, we've really opened up the door for students to have a lot more options at the tail end of their high school career. And so you're seeing that 98% of students take 4 years of math. That is up from 96 at the last review, and my recollection was that it was closer to 93, 94 in the review prior to that. So that's a big jump up. We have 77% that are taking a course at least as rigorous as level 3 pre-calculus. That's up from 68% 5 years ago. That's a huge jump up, and that number is 35% nationally. So when we think about the strength of our program, our kids are so much further ahead overall than kids nationally. And then with calculus, we had 56% of students take a calculus-based course, which again is up from 46%. 46% was a ludicrously high number to begin with. That number is 15% nationally. So the fact that we are 40% over the national average in terms of students taking a calculus-based course in high school is fantastic. And in particular, I think we have kids taking it without it being this overwhelming reach for them. And a lot of that, again, has to do with the accelerated college prep, and I'll discuss that in a little bit. So some of the main changes, and again, there's been a ton of changes over the last 5 years, but some of the main things that have come up that I wanted to focus on, the 2017 curriculum framework, we thought this was going to be a really problematic issue. It really, like the 2011 frameworks, changed all of our courses. For K through 12, we had to buy new textbooks. For almost all of our courses, K through 12, we had to realign our curriculum. It was a massive amount of work. 2017 turned out not to be as much of an issue. It actually was more of a tweaking, a redefining. They shifted some things around, and probably for the better in terms of how our work had kind of progressed. So that was actually turned out to not be as huge of an issue. Really where I think it mattered is that the MCAS 2.0 then got aligned to the 2017 standards. And so that was sort of where the curriculum framework and understanding those for your grade level was probably a bigger piece of the puzzle. But for MCAS 2.0, we did a ton of work. The elementary specialists produced a lot of tools so that students had the ability to practice the equation editors, to get used to the basic prompts, and really get used to practicing typing on computers, especially at those younger ages, grade 3, where that was something that was just a few years ago really an anomaly. So they did a ton of work along getting those materials developed and getting them to the elementary teachers who did a great job, obviously implementing them. We are hyper-focused on our grade 10 MCAS. That's the one that we know that matters. That's the one where all of our students have passed and continue to pass, and we've had such tremendous success there. So as we came into MCAS 2.0 for the high school last year, we built a website for practice that was pretty extensive. I shared some of the review materials with you guys in the packet that was in one of the addendums. That, again, there was a lot to go through and make sure that it was all new material, all new ways of assessing. There was a lot of new special education things that we had to sort of tie and pull in together. So we built that website and shared all that information out and sort of became a leader for the 10th grade MCAS locally. A lot of districts around here use our materials to help their schools get ready as well. We hosted a forum for about 25 local math directors with the 2 math test developers for the MCAS. And then I was a panel participant on the appropriateness of the grade 10 MCAS following that assessment and sort of helping to tweak it for future administration. So we put a lot of effort into the MCAS 2.0. As much as it's sort of been around for a few years, the bump in the road and missing last year's testing and this year's testing being changed to the shorter tests, it's going to take some time. I would imagine that, it'll be about the time of the next program review where we've started to develop some norms and some ideas of what students really need to focus on and how to guide them in the best possible fashion to make sure that they're reaching their best test scores. Right now we have institutional knowledge for years and years and years on how to help students pass the test. And so all that has kind of gone out the window, and we're redeveloping it now. The computer science courses have been a huge change for our math program as well, and let's call it a math and computer science program. That was one of my goals when I interviewed with Dr. Gallo. I said I was adamant about the fact that we needed to bring computer science back to the high school. I didn't quite know how we were going to do it, but over the years we focused on hiring staff that were excellent math teachers but also had computer science backgrounds to see if we could help sort of build some of that material. We started the tech squad with Mrs. Jacobson. That was really her baby and her mind, her sort of developed out of her mind and out of her research. And that's really, it was a student-to-teacher-based project course, and students were in websites and infusing technology in the classroom. They were learning about hardware and software. They were helping Joe Andrews fix Chromebooks that were broken. They were helping other teachers built their own websites. So that was really an interesting first sort of computer science course that we put into place. And then Mrs. Blake really helped usher in our coding program. She developed the curriculum for the Intro to Computer Science course, and then followed suit with, the AP provides the curriculum for computer science, but it's really her who had to take that and learn and develop that curriculum for teaching here at the high school. So I give Mrs. Blake a ton of credit. We wouldn't have our computer science program at the high school without her. Ms. Sassarosi then took over the Intro to Computer Science course as well, something that was new to her. She had background, but had to learn a lot to get ready to do that. And then our coding clubs as well. Mrs. Blake started the one here at the high school. Mr. Galvin and Mr. Santopia run the one at the middle school. So again, all of that sort of came out of individuals' curiosity and interest, and I'm really appreciative of all the work that those teachers put in to get the computer science program up and running. At the same time as sort of I gotten this going, Dr. Lavillois and Ms. Roberts clearly got the elementary program going. And so now we're at this point where we're starting to see more students coming to the high school with an interest in coding, and coming to the middle school coding club already having learned a lot of coding and sharing different ideas. So we're excited for the future, because that program will definitely be growing, and it should be. I think it's a very valuable skill for the future. We've developed some special education math courses at the high school, which, in collaboration with Dr. Vinnis, we really worked hard to place staffing appropriately and to look at sort of developing and growing our model there. So we've done two things. We've started co-teaching Algebra 1 and geometry classes that are a true co-teaching environment with a special educator and a math teacher, and we're still hoping to expand those. We have one in each right now. We're hoping to expand and maybe add another at each of those two courses. We have a co-taught Algebra 2 with Algebra 2 class as well, which had sort of fallen by the wayside just because we hadn't had the staffing for it, and then also hadn't necessarily had the appropriate special educator who could handle the Algebra 2 materials. So that course has been reestablished. And then we've established some small group math courses at the high school as well for grade 9 and grade 10 at this point, and actually we'll have a grade 11 small group instruction course as well, taught by a special educator, but it's an actual math class. So that's been a big shift for us, and something that we've been happily working on with Dr. Vinnis's department, and still working on. And again, I would imagine 4 years from now in the next review, it'll be something that will be a much bigger, broader picture that we'll be able to sort of come back and recap. But a major change for sure. And the next thing, the SBRC, the Standards-Based Report Card, I mentioned that it's not that it's this major change to the department, but it was major, major work that the elementary teachers did. And in doing so, they really poured into the standards, the grade 3 through 5 teachers. I mean, they spent the better part of 3 to 4 years working on transitioning to standards-based report cards. It wasn't an easy process, because it just isn't easy work. And they worked really, really hard. I was very proud of the effort that they put in. And we ended up developing not only the standards-based report card, but power standards for each grade level, progressions of standards, so that a teacher in grade 4 can understand how something was taught in grade 3, how it's going to progress in grade 5, and they can kind of see how their part of the teaching fits into things. And then guiding benchmarks for those standards-based report cards as well were developed across the grade levels. So again, a ton of work that was put in place by the elementary teachers. And so I know that's not specific to math. The ELA, a lot of that was on the back of the ELA teachers as well. That was a huge, huge shift in the elementary math program. And again, I can't thank the teachers enough. I can't thank the elementary math specialists enough. They work tirelessly to organize that material and to really help guide teachers through a lot of that curriculum work and get that greater depth of understanding, which is unique. And it was valuable time. High school teachers and middle school teachers, they're departmentalized. They spend all that time just sort of focused on math. Elementary teachers are obviously split across so many subjects. So for them to be able to slow down and have that extra time and to really dig into the standards and think about what's valuable and what's a primary standard versus secondary standard was really valuable work. And although I know it was arduous and maybe many of them would say they didn't enjoy it, I do think that they really, truly learned from it. And then, as I said before, I wanted to sort of come back and circle to the accelerated college prep sequence. These are the three sort of major courses in that sequence: the level 3 pre-algebra, the algebra 1 quadratic, and the algebra 2 with trigonometry. Again, all three level 3 courses, college prep courses. And so when you look at the sequence here, what's important is what is hard to do is to get someone, parents or children in 6th grade or 7th grade to be thinking about what's happening in 12th grade. That's really our role sort of as a department, is to think about the longevity of where students are going to end up. What happened for a long, long time is that we had way too many students choosing to be in honors pre-algebra in grade 7. We had about 55 to 60% of students in that course load, which is, it's honestly inappropriate. A true honors program, by the time our students get to 9th and 10th grade, the honors program is about 25% of the class, and that has held true for years. And so we had so many kids overriding because they were concerned that if they weren't in honors in 7th grade, then they would never have an opportunity to ever accelerate their sequence or be in honors again. And so that really affected the honors course because we couldn't teach it like an honors course. It was either you're going to just fail 20% of the kids who really shouldn't have been there. You couldn't move all those kids out of the courses. It really was problematic for a while. So we began to sort of move the Algebra 1 quadratic into 8th grade. That Algebra 1 quadratic class that happens here is the same exact class that happens in 9th grade. Those teachers meet multiple times throughout the year to collaborate and coordinate their curriculum. And that's very important because 2 years from now, when they end up in Algebra 2, those students, whether they were in middle school or high school, are blended together, and so they have to have the same background. But then we ultimately added the level 3 pre-algebra in as well. We had lots of great feedback from parents and families. It really adjusted our levels much more appropriately. And in keeping with the fact that we have really some really excellently strong students who may not be honor students, it gave them an opportunity to accelerate their sequence. Following the state model for acceleration, it's still, both these courses teach all of the 7th and 8th grade standards in 1 year. And that's sort of how the state advises accelerating, or it's one of the plans by which they advise. And so it's a rigorous sequence here. But what's most important is that students have an opportunity, right? Because not all students are ready in grade 7. I've had a lot of freshmen that I've taught in the past who I've been able to identify throughout the year, and you go, oh, wow, you're really actually should be an honor student. And we're able to sort of, differentiate curriculum and get them ready and move them up. And one of them is actually graduating this year as one of our top BC calculus students who was in college prep. He just wasn't ready in middle school. So we see that a lot. And so what's important for us is to keep those doors open. So a student that may be here in level 3 pre-algebra or math 7, they may move forward with a normal sequence that gets them all the way to level 3 pre-calculus. And as I said before, we are way, way, way ahead of national standards. Like, that's remarkable if students are making it to level 3 pre-calculus. And that's a great, very strong college prep sequence. However, some kids are able to handle doubling up their math, moving forward, moving ahead. And what that allows is by the time they're seniors, they're actually opening the door for honors calculus or analysis, which is an intro to calculus class. And we've also seen that our AP statistics numbers have been way up. As many of these students are not only just taking the calculus class, but also taking AP statistics and doubling up, and sometimes doubling up junior year. So it's opened the door for that, and we currently have what I think is maybe our highest enrollment since I've been director, potential enrollment at least for AP statistics for next year. The other important piece is trying to think about growth. What we saw a lot in the middle school, and when we had all of those kids going into grade 7 honors, is it wasn't just that it wasn't the right place for them. They left grade 7 defeated. They left grade 7 feeling like they weren't good at math, that they weren't ever going to be good at math, and they kind of gave up on it and moved on. And that's the last thing we want. Right? We want students who are excited, who are learning at a pace and challenged and feeling good about themselves. And so what's really important to keep in mind is having these 3 levels is giving students an opportunity to feel good about math, to grasp it at a speed that's important, and to, when I say grasp, to really understand it, to work with it, to use it over and over again at a pace that's appropriate so that they can actually learn the material. And so from there, that gives us the opportunity. A student in Math 7 could move to Algebra 1 Quadratic in grade 8 and could be in Honors Geometry by grade 9. We've definitely seen that happen. There's multiple pathways for success, and the model is built around growth and giving kids an opportunity. So I know I'm kind of going on and on about this, but this is a huge, huge part of our program. It's been a lot of work on the backs of the middle school teachers in particular, who have, 7th grade math teachers all added an extra prep. They all teach 3 preps now to do this. It was the only way to make it work. The 8th grade teachers all teach 3 preps to make this work. So it was a lot of work, but it's been very valuable. And again, as I said, our calculus numbers, our pre-calculus numbers are way up. So I think it's something that we should be very proud of. And that's why I want to spend a little bit of extra time on it. So strengths, appropriate educational opportunities for all. I don't need to spend any more time talking about that than what I just did. Our staffing is amazing. We have a lot of lifelong learners. The professional development that they have dove into was very impressive and diverse, and not just math-based. We saw a lot of teachers taking a lot of social emotional courses in the past couple of years, and really trying to think about mindfulness in terms of math education, which I was proud to see a lot of teachers wanting to do that on their own and kind of came to me with these ideas. And we certainly supported that. They're very dynamic and flexible. I would say it's such a collaborative group. We work in teams. Everyone shares materials, shares pacing. They work together. The 89% of the teachers in the math department are in some type of leadership position outside of their math class, right? Whether it's coaching, mentoring, organizing volunteer situations, advising clubs. Again, 89%. I think that's speaks volumes of the type of people that are there. They want to be part of the school. They don't just want to come in and teach math and leave. And I think another really great attribute of our staff is that they're really willing to be honest with students while still sort of being compassionate. One thing that we kind of focus on, or I say to them a lot with math in particular, is that you're not doing them a favor telling students that they're right if they're wrong. And yet at the same time, we're continually asking students to take risks in class. We're continually asking them to make conjectures and take a guess and try something new and try and share those ideas with everybody. And so trying to find that balance about getting kids to do that and then still being like, well, yeah, so you got a C on your test, and that's not great, but I know you've made these really good strides, and we have a way to actually, I see a path forward for you getting better. And having those conversations and having that attitude as a collective is tremendously valuable. And again, I see it in how students are perceiving themselves and perceiving that growth mindset, that it's about improvement, and it's not always just how you did on the one assessment. It's how do you improve maybe you've stumbled someplace, but can you actually continue to get better? Can you, get over that one bad quiz you had or something like that? So again, can't thank the staffing enough for how excellent they have been. The student success speaks for itself. Again, I don't need to go through all those results. You guys saw them in the different appendices. But again, our assessment results are excellent, and the number of kids taking high-level math courses is excellent. Common assessment seems like a weird thing to kind of list under strengths, but it's something that with the onset of the 2011 standards, we spent almost 7 years working towards building those across K through 12. They are tremendously valuable tools that have been collaboratively developed by multiple teachers, in teams. They're living documents, so they sort of change and adjust. But what's really helpful, one, they help give us the norms that we need for our vertical articulation of our program, right? And so that's a huge aspect. So if we have a test, especially when you have teachers teaching a new course for the first year, they come in, they can kind of work and they say, oh, this is the end of chapter test that we're going to use for this unit. And they have something to sort of aim their instruction toward. But it also helps in terms of, I see teachers all the time, they sit down in the math room and they have those conversations and say, my kids really struggled with number 8. How did you teach that in class? And they're actually promoting excellent conversations with teachers about professional practice and professional growth, and how to best teach kids different ideas. And that's something that I think gets lost in this idea of assessment, right? The idea that what do teachers actually get out of it, and how do they bring that back to teaching their kids? I sort of mentioned the norms. There are certain things like the Chapter 8 test in Algebra 1, I know is on solving quadratic functions. It's something that is sort of I don't want to say make or break, but it really helps us determine, and it happens right around the time that we're making decisions about placements for the next year. It really is a good chapter for understanding whether kids have the abstract thinking and can synthesize 4, 5, 6 things together at once. And we see that in Chapter 7 in grade 6 when they do the rates and ratios. The Algebra 2 algebra review assessment they do at the beginning of the year. Again, it really helps us that it'll identify some kids that we go, oh, we might actually need to consider placement and maybe moving this child to a different course because they don't have the Algebra 1 background to be successful here. And sometimes that's because they've come from another district, another school. So again, those common assessments have really, really been something that we worked very, very hard to get. Again, it took 7 years to develop them. That was a lot of summer work. That was a lot of full year PD development where teachers took multiple all-day professional developments to work on them. It was a lot of work, but it's highly successful and a great cornerstone of our program. And then the other strength I wanted to mention was the use of technology. We had a 3-year department goal prior to COVID to infuse more technology into the classroom and really focusing on, can you be more efficient, more engaging, or more effective? And for every teacher, that was a little bit different, right? Everyone had an entirely different learning curve. For some, just figuring out how to be efficient with a website or Google Classroom was a huge stretch, whereas others already sort of did that on their own. And so, again, everyone sort of started in their own place, but what I appreciated is that everyone worked to take steps forward. And so, again, as I said, sort of that efficiency with website and Google Classroom, there was engagement with Kahoot, and quizzes, and Quizlet, GimKit, Math Play, using Flipgrid to capture little videos of students thinking. And then this idea of being effective. Teachers were working on flipped classrooms using Loom and Edpuzzle before COVID, using Pear Deck and Mimeo Mobile to capture student work digitally, using Delta Math for assigning practice, unique practice to kids. We're actually looking at shifting our entire summer work packet situation over to Delta Math for effectiveness and ease, using Edulastic and quizzes for assessments to help students get ready for MCAS, using the ALEX program for blended learning in Algebra 1, using IXL and Prodigy for intervention in middle school. You name it, we've been sort of all over the place. The staff has really, really invested a lot of time into that. And so then I thought we were in actually a pretty unique position as we sort of came into COVID and our new sort of educational model, because so many teachers had sort of spent a year or two working on developing the technology skills anyway. And then, add that to the 14-day PD that we started the year off with was amazing. And our math staff had already been providing peer-to-peer professional development in department meetings and in the district-wide PD days. And so that's just sort of, again, coming back to the fact I talked about the staffing being so collaborative and how much they work together. That continued as we sort of moved into the COVID era, so to speak. And really, I think, put us in a unique position for math teaching, where one of the things that was really hard is to be able to, informally assess. When kids are in front of you, you can informally assess all the time. And so we needed to find other ways to sort of do that. And so, again, we were uniquely positioned for that, and it was certainly a strength. Our challenges. So here's the common assessments piece again. And it's tied into test integrity and tutors and equity as a whole. As I said, it took 7 years to build those common assessments, and then we were sort of met with a change in the interpretation of the student record law. And so our common assessments typically, in the past, our past practice was that in grade 6, the assessments would go home. Grade 7, they'd go home on a request, but we'd still try to have the student meet with the teacher. And from grade 8 on, the student would meet with the teacher to go over the assessment. And really the point and a part of that, we're trying to help students foster that responsibility, help teach them how to sort of slowly work towards staying for extra help and meeting with the teacher. And again, the classroom teacher is the first person who most understands the mistakes that the student is making. And so that had sort of always been our practice. And then, but we kept the assessments in-house. If parents wanted to see them, they could come in, we could meet, we'd find ways to share those assessments. Part of the issue that we were dealing with is that students and parents were posting quizzes online. We had tutoring companies that were offering incentives specifically for Hingham math tests, and it just caused this massive inequity. So for us, the value of the common assessments, as I mentioned before, is sort of understanding those norms and how kids are performing and how they should be performing from year to year. And it really allows us to adjust our practice. But the fact that there was sort of this inequity with if tutors are getting the assessments and then tutoring specifically to our common assessments because they've been able to get their hands on them, it really puts kids at a disadvantage who cannot afford a tutor. And as I went through, we have opportunities for every single student. Our true belief is that every student should be able to be in a math class that's an appropriately challenging math course without the need for a tutor. We understand that it's a family's right to hire a tutor. If they want to work with tutors, that's fine. But it does tie back into our equity issues for sure. And it's something that we're concerned about for the long haul. The fact that those common assessments now can just be, asked for and sent is also a concern, because creating a good assessment isn't just creating, changing the numbers. Oh, we changed the number from a 5 to a 7. You can do that on skill-based questions, but if you're trying to ask students to apply a skill and apply it uniquely and creatively, that takes some nuance, because you really have to think about not only just how you're going to assess that, but how you're going to teach kids towards that over the course of a couple weeks. And if, the cat is out of the bag in terms of they know what the question is at the end, then you're back to just teaching rote skills. And that's not really what we're aiming for. And we want kids to be thinking and applying. So there's a unique challenge there that we're going to have to work through going forward for sure. Second challenge is communication. The program's complex. So it's a lot of communication to keep everybody on the same page. The nomenclature's awkward. Algebra 1 quadratic emphasis versus linear emphasis. We use level 3 versus upper standard versus honors versus advanced. So there are some nuances in there that are pretty complex. I shared in the appendices some of the letters that go out to families. I think I sent the 6th and 7th grade ones, or maybe the 7th and 8th grade ones. But we share, we send a lot of communications to families to help kind of articulate the program. But also, in particular, the math website needs to house a lot more of that information. And that's something that, we were sort of waiting for the onset of the new school website. And now that it's here, this would have been a great year to do it. Obviously, again, we've had all of our time and other things, but you'll see that'll be a goal for moving forward. Elementary support has continued to be a challenge. The elementary math specialists are remarkable. They do so much work. If you read through the program, you can clearly see how much they do over and over again. Right? Their responsibilities are vast. They're excellent at their jobs, and we have been trying to get one in every building for, as far as I know, at least 10 years, if not more. My part of it has been for 10 years now. It looks like that's coming, which will be fantastic. It looks like that, provided everything goes through town meeting with the budget, we're going to have a lot more elementary support, have some interventionists. We're going to have an elementary specialist in every building. And so hopefully, again, that will make a big difference going forward. But for now, I did list it as a challenge because having to share the elementary specialists across 2 buildings has been limited in a lot of what we can do. And I am super appreciative of the 2 elementary specialists that we have. And also appreciative of the elementary principals with their understanding and flexibility that we can't do all that we want to do with the staffing that we've had up to this point. Maintenance of high standards, I think, will continue to be a challenge. Obviously, I mentioned the common assessment piece, but this was also sort of part of our need for the level 3 pre-algebra that I mentioned before. We put it in there because we had to lessen our standards for the honors course because we didn't have an appropriate student body in there. So we met that need. We have long had a practice, and by long I mean at least 20 years, and the practice is similar to many local districts, that a student who takes Algebra 1 for the first time needs to earn the 70% to move forward. This sounds punitive at times. You say, well, if a kid doesn't fail, why do they have to repeat? But quite frankly, Algebra 1 and algebra readiness is the most important part of being ready to take any other math class going forward. And if you're not there your first year through, you're just going to struggle tremendously as you move forward through the program. And I mean tremendously. And you're going to get to a spot where you might fail a class or two and really not have a recourse to fix it because you don't have the underlying skills that you need. What I will say about this is, we really view it as a part of our program, and we view it as an opportunity for growth for students. As kids move through the middle school, the research says you're not going to hold back a child. So that means they're sort of progressing through a new set of standards, a new set of standards, a new set of standards. So this idea that they actually get a chance to slow down, revisit the same material, typically with the same textbook, typically with the same teacher a lot of the times. And when we're talking about developing and synthesizing 6, 7, 8-step practices, a lot of times that first year they might get the first 3 or 4 down, but they just can't quite close that gap because it's a lot of work. And sometimes it's brain development and they're more mature. Sometimes it's their interest or willingness to do the work as well, or their effective effort. But every single student who has done this pathway has passed the grade 10 MCAS in Algebra 2 and graduated. And I think that is an important thing to keep in mind as we continue to move forward, that we have not had a student ultimately pass the grade 10 MCAS that has taken that pathway. And so I think that's part of the reason I bring that up is that as we have new committee members, as we have new central office, as we have new building and new teaching staff, that's always something that's going to be a really important part of our program. And it's important to kind of continue to keep that at the forefront of people's minds. And then demands on teacher time is something that I think Dr. Laviloa would call a dilemma, right? One of those unsolvable problems in a way, but it's something that I think we just need to continue to keep in mind. The most important thing for teachers to do is to have time to plan good lessons so that they can show up to class and interact well with the kids. And there's just so many things that pull at them: the evaluation system, DCAPs, IEPs, NEASC. Everything just continues to escalate. And I think one of the things that's really important to note, and I don't have a solution, but the increase of email and parent communication to teachers it's just really been exponential in the last, I feel like even just like the last 5 years or so. And it takes a lot of time. It's really easy, and I'm not blaming parents. Again, it's a dilemma. I don't know what the solution is, but it's something we have to be mindful of, because a teacher during their prep period used to be able to prep for their classes. Now, most teachers are spending almost all of their prep periods responding to parent emails. And communication is great, but it's definitely taking away from time that they would use otherwise. I would also say that there has been an increase in negative communications for sure over the last 5 years. And that can really bring an entire teacher's day to just a standstill, right? It just stops because you're trying to think about how do you respond to something that is either untrue or accusational, etc. So it's a dilemma for sure, but it's something that I think should be at the forefront of the committee's mind. I do think it's and obviously central office. I think it's very important for us to continue to think about that as we think about initiatives that we put forth and how we want teachers to invest in the things that we want them to invest in. Our COVID response, again, I shared a bunch of the curriculum documents, I think towards the end of the appendices. Basically in March, we started developing documents immediately because we knew that we were going to have to have an idea of what curriculum we may or may not cover towards the end of last year. So we made those documents. We came back in August. We shared those documents with each other, had a lot of vertical teaming meetings within the department, discussed what may have been taught remotely, what was taught briefly in school, but maybe needed a little extra review to start off this year. And then before the school year even began, we developed those documents again for this year. We made decisions from the start and said, let's think about power standards. What are the things that endure from year to year to year that the kids need to know no matter what? What is something that might be able to be pushed off for a year or two? Surface area in grade 8 could be taught quickly, or could be pushed, if worst case scenario, could be pushed off because they teach it entirely again in geometry at the high school level. Completing the square in Algebra 1. That was something that we typically do. We just said, nope, let's not do it. It takes us a full week to do it. It's not an Algebra 1 standard, but it is part of the curriculum that we use in our accelerated pathway. Let's put it on hold because they already teach it entirely in Algebra 2 anyway, and then they learn it again in pre-calculus. So there are things like that that we really kind of made some of those decisions at the beginning of the year. And then we've gone back and we've had multiple PD days throughout the year to sort of revisit those documents, keep track of how our pacing's going. And in our department meetings in May, for both the middle school and the high school, our sole goal will be update those so that we have a full sort of understanding of what curriculum may have not been covered this year, and so we can sort of pass that information forward. What I will say, and I'm thrilled to say, is that K through 12, we're really covering nearly the vast majority of our standards. Our teachers have been remarkable this year. We understand that there are going to be individual gaps for sure, and that's something we will acknowledge and have to work with going forward. But on a whole, our teachers have done a remarkable job teaching the curriculum and assessing students and assessing that they're understanding it. And the students who really dug in, and provided effective effort have done excellent. So that is actually a silver lining in all of this. And so we'll be able to kind of go back, but we'll have those documents. And it's important to kind of keep in mind that some of those things that they missed this year will be 2 years down the road before it actually, I don't want to say matters again, but it just depends on where it might come up in the curriculum. So that'll be something we'll be tracking for, a few years going forward. HTSS will have obviously a big impact in terms of moving forward and how we can address some of those individual concerns that we have. And then, as far as there's sort of some concern around course selection, assessment, etc. We have so much experience with our staff who've been here for a while, and again, a lot of those institutional norms, that they really have a good feeling for what kids should know. So we recognize that some kids really haven't had a good year, but a lot of the feedback that we're getting as we're getting our course overrides is, oh, it was just a bad year, they'll be fine next year. And the teachers are recognizing, well, actually the student might not have the skill set to be ready for an honors course next year. So that's something we're working with families right now. We're reaching out and having those conversations. And we'll work with families, and we'll just have to do what's best for kids as we go forward through that. And then the other sort of interesting thing that's come up as students have come back into the building full time, for a lot of our students who chose to be remote, we had a lot of issues of academic integrity in terms of use of online math solving apps, and kids were intentionally staying home on assessment days and using math apps, and despite signing pledges and our constant conversations about honesty anyway, and we probably had, well, I know we caught about 100 students, which is significant for sure, but we know we've had more than that, and a lot of kids who have come back to school now who were relying on using apps for all sorts of different things are now kind of struggling and having to really turn the wheels and get going. And so we're trying to evaluate those students appropriately for where they are, and make sure that we're also thinking about, will they be able to catch up on some of the curriculum that they may not have learned as well as they should have going forward. So, it's a unique challenge, but those are things that we will tackle as they come along, and we'll do our best to help students. Again, as long as they're willing to work hard and put in an effective effort, we will certainly get them there and close the gaps. And then the last thing, I think I mentioned this in multiple meetings earlier this year, but we cut the entire computer science program this year just so we could actually have small enough class sizes to focus on the math. And there were some unique challenges to doing the entire computer science classes online as they were structured anyway. So that's always a balance going forward. And I do think that having smaller class sizes so that we can identify student needs and address them in the moment is going to be something that's important going forward, and sort of trying to balance that out with bringing back computer science as something that's sort of important part of our COVID response. And so then lastly, moving forward, our major goal is the HTSS implementation. That's going to take us a full 4 years. It'll be 4 years from now. That'll be a major part of that next report. And hopefully we'll have figured out all our bumps in the road at that point, and we'll feel like we've just reached a place where it's really humming along in a good spot. We need that long-term computer science plan for sure, in terms of not just staffing, but also courses and how that will play out in the long run. Will it be a situation where we need a fully dedicated computer science teacher who can teach multiple courses at the high school at that point? I do wish to explore a gifted and talented pathway. That was one of the first conversations I had with Dr. Austin when he arrived. One of our long-standing reasons for not doing it had been that we offer BC Calculus, which only 1% to 2% of students in the country take. So in many ways, we have a gifted and talented pathway. We have our math enrichment courses. We do a lot of things that do promote that. However, the other argument was that it was accelerating under our old model was really a pathway to nothing. you took BC Calculus as a junior, and then you didn't have a math class to take afterwards. And so one of the things Dr. Austin and I talked about was potentially maybe trying to partner with a college or university to see if we can find a way to get the students to have college credit that senior year for a multivariable calculus class. And there's also the online courses have become much better, much better, even in just the last year or so, right? So some opportunities have sort of opened up there as well that now make the end of the line goal more valuable. But again, at what cost? You're now adding another singleton course in at the high school. That also means you'd be insulating the honors geometry class into the middle school, which would be beneficial because right now, a student who is accelerated has to leave the middle school in grade 8. At the end of the day, they can't participate in any extracurricular activities, band, music, chorus, etc. So that's definitely a problem with our current system. So anyway, there's a lot of work to kind of look into that to see if it's worth its while, but it's something that we're very interested in. It's probably the last part of a program of providing access to every single student and every single opportunity that we could probably even get to. And then our long-term technology use in the classroom, obviously I talked about the steps that we had made over the last few years, trying to determine what's going to be important going forward. And that's department-wise, but also district-wise in terms of the type of hardware that students have going forward. It's not just what we can do, but what we need our students to have to be able to participate if we're going to be using different types of technology. Obviously, I spent a lot of time talking about the accelerated college prep sequence. Now that it's really in place and we've found like a pretty good rhythm, we just need to sit on it for a little while and see how it plays out and really kind of evaluate the data. Just don't assume that everything's okay, but really make sure that's serving the purpose we need it to serve. The common assessment practices, trying to find a solution that's equitable for all students and maintains what we're trying to promote as a department there, and then obviously the communication through the math website. So these would be some of our major goals over the next 4 to 5 years. See you. I'm just going to skip past that. What questions do you have? Because I know you've been listening forever.
Yeah, thank you very much for the very comprehensive overview. Do you want to maybe take us out of shared screen so we can see everyone?
Oh, that would be helpful.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments? Jen?
Off mute.
Yep, you're off mute.
Hear me? Okay,
yep.
Perfect. Thanks. Just mimicking what Carrie said, just thank you for a very thorough review. I enjoyed reading it, and it answered many questions I've had in the past, so thank you. I just have one quick question and then one comment. What type of skills-based is math assessments are done at the elementary level? I'm thinking back to Dr. Little's presentation in February with listing the DIBELS and the reading assessments and the data that had. I was curious about that with the math assessments. And then just, and then I just wanted to mention that the program studies, the comment you had about the need to review so that there is consistency from grade 6 to 12. I agree with this, and I agree with that, and that there is some confusion, and I appreciate your awareness on that. Maybe that's just all I wanted to say, so thank you.
Of course. I think your second comment, Jen, was about the language in the program of studies. It cut out a little bit.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's definitely something we're going to work on. And that's, on face value, seems like a small item, but it's a huge, you're coordinating all the departments, principals, guidance, everybody. So and you want to do it right and do it once. So I think it'll be something that will be a big part of next year, just kind of cleaning that up. But things like DIBELS, et cetera, at the elementary school, we don't have those type of assessments. We really rely on our common assessments, our cyclical. We have cumulative assessments in everyday math as well that happen every 2 chapters. So again, we can rely on those a lot for placement. And then we use our fact practice assessments, which happen every grade. It's bi-monthly. Every grade's a little bit different. and can help kind of cue us into whether students are struggling. It gives us pretty good, clear data, but the type of data that is developed on the ELA side is not something that exists for us, and something that we've been talking about for sure with our HTSS program and trying to figure out how we approach that. And as we look into curriculum materials, do we have curriculum materials that can also pair in some type of skill-based assessments that are appropriate? So, it's a straight answer.
Does anyone else have anything? So I want to thank you and your staff for this. Has been a crazy year, and I know everyone's been working 3 times as hard as usual. So we really appreciate that. 2 questions. One, so the presentation you gave tonight and the report that was in our packet, will that be on the math department website?
At some point, I mean, literally, so when we pulled the math website together, for some reason, it pulled all of the data that was from the old website, not the, and I don't mean the old, like 2019, like it pulled stuff from 2017. So I just pulled everything down and literally put under construction because we need to start fresh. So I could put it up as like the only things that are up there, sure. And that'll be good. It'll be a good start. And that's where I'm getting at with the website. Like it needs a full zhuzhing, curriculum guides and enrichment. And I have some I don't want to just have information there. I want to have like tools to help families and help kids that, whether you need support, whether you want enrichment. So we're looking at that. But yes, I do think, I did realize in post, there'll be, I think, one addendum, one of the MCAS addendums I think that I'll have to pull out because there may be identifiable information per MCAS because the N is less than 10. So I shared it with you guys, but I realized after the fact that it might be something, but yes, I can share it as is on the website for sure.
That's great. There's a lot of good information in there too that people would probably want to see.
Yes.
I just had a comment on the common assessments talked about, and you mentioned a changing interpretation in the student records law.
Yep.
What actually happened is Hingham was found in violation of the student records law by DESE. And a lot of other districts aren't. So just wondering, when you are looking at this dilemma, are you looking at what other districts do?
Other districts did what our past practice was from everybody that I have discussed it with. So there are different. I've had that discussion with. A couple times with our directors, our Lighthouse group, and that has been traditionally the practice. So there are other districts who have gone all digital with some of their assessments, which I actually don't think is appropriate because there are ways to do it, but it's tricky to get kids to show all the work that they need to show and to give them credit for, to give students appropriate partial credit, to have them submit something digitally they're already writing everything out on paper and are in front of you. I get it now when you have kids in all sorts of different mediums that you would have them all submitted digitally. But that's another approach, especially through Elastic, that some districts are taking. I don't think, and especially after discussing it and practicing it over the last couple of years, and that was definitely something that was part of our digital sort of technology practice the last couple of years, is looking at Elastic and sharing those assessments sort of with teams of teachers. I'm not sure if that's the best approach. So hence more work to be done for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I don't know if any members of the public have any questions.
I think Liza had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sure.
So Dave, thank you. I think, I read through the report. I'll send you some comments I had on communication. But one thing I noticed with thank you on the middle school for reworking that 7th grade math. I know my own kids went through those challenges, and this change seems very effective. But one thing on the middle school with the special ed kids and some of with the Title I math lab, and then we have enrichment classes. There's something when we're looking at the strategic plan that we could look at. How do we, is it as much as getting smaller class sizes so that they don't have to have a second or a third math class. And you noted in your report, later on in the report, but we're teaching students to be good citizens as well as learning basic educational functions. And by giving them 2 or 3 math classes, that takes away from their opportunity to do other things, which they may thrive under. And so that flagged to me of, could we be doing something different with our regular classes and not think about the budget, look at the best practice and then look at the budget part of it later.
So the answer is yes. So that's something Dr. Lavillois and I've kind of already sort of been bouncing around with the HTSS conversations. And how can we use our model that we're using in Title I potentially, and maybe try to shift that to 7th and 8th grade. So because that model is a little bit more flexible, it offers push-in and pull-out support, but it still involves scheduling kids at times. It does involve scheduling that extra math time even in the Title I program. It's a tricky wicket. Does the middle school overhaul its schedule, and is it worth it for just that? But yeah, I put that in there because I truly believe it, that for some kids, getting the extra support is fantastic and they love it and they feel so good to have it, and it's something that's really good for them, and they really invest in it and they buy into it and they grow, and a lot of times they don't need it the next year. For other kids, it's a true struggle. They don't want to be in there, and they walk into that class and they're like, ugh, why am I, I'm in math for the second time today. This stinks. I should be in wood lab. I should be in gym. Well, we don't skip gym, but, and totally get that. So we try, and Mr. Smith and I are in complete agreements and have worked a lot with families, as well as the entire guidance department in the middle school. We really try to listen to families when they bring those concerns to us. This is not the right spot for my child. And so we have those conversations and we approach them on an individual basis, and try and find a way to address them. But to your bigger point, I agree that, and I've been talking to Mr. Tews, is sort of newer to this district, but was in a similar role in Situate before he came here. Has taught some of those math prep classes, and he and I also have been sort of bouncing back and forth about that idea of is there a better way? So that's definitely part of the HTSS program and how we look at having that interventionist role and helping those kids moving forward. But again, I truly agree that the classes that excite people are those electives usually. My favorite class in high school was electronics, followed by small engine repair, right? Those are I loved them. And then electronics too, and small engine repair too, and woodshop, I loved those. And I developed a passion for them. And so I truly understand the need to make sure that we are providing those kids those options if they need them. Right? And that comes back to, I would stress that initially those classes were put in, as a response to MCAS scores. And as you know, I have said for years and years and years, I would rather sacrifice an MCAS score at a middle school for the sake of a kid being happy. And that's even why we sort of have that Math 8 class that slows down that curriculum, intentionally doesn't teach everything before MCAS, but kids are getting the attention that they need and are feeling like they're comfortable and they're feeling like they're growing and improving. And that's way more important. But I do think that best practices from other districts too will really help sort of inform how we go. I don't want to make my own decision on that. I think if we're going to look at things, let's talk to people that have something successful going on.
Okay, great. I think that's it. Again, thank you very much for that presentation. It's just been a long day, I'm sure, so I appreciate your time.
It's been a long day for everybody, so I appreciate your time and you guys hanging in as well.
Okay, great, thank you. 9.3 is to consider proposed policy manual section I, which is instruction, and act as appropriate. So for anyone who's new to our meetings, over the past year, we've been reviewing our policy manual to make sure that we have all the legally required policies, as well as those that reflect best practices and our priorities as a district. So this is the third read of section I. As with the other sections we reviewed this year, the policy subcommittee reviewed the Massachusetts Association of School Committees templates for these sections, along with the Hingham policies where we have them. Dr. Austin participated in our discussions, and the policies were shared with the appropriate administrators, staff, and the HEA for input. So I was hoping that we can vote on this to approve section I in form tonight. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve section I, instruction of the school committee policy manual in form as presented.
I will second.
Thank you, Libby. Okay, Michelle?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Nets?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Liza?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. And then the next one is to consider proposed policy manual section K, which is community relations, and this is our first read. As we were pulling together the materials for tonight, we realized that we missed section K earlier, so this is going to be the first read, and hopefully we can do the second one at our next meeting. So as with the previous section, we worked through this section with the MASC field director, with Dr. Austin, and we requested staff input. This section recognizes that the Hingham Public Schools contribute to the community success and in turn benefits from the community resources. So it contains goals on the relationships, policies to define and strengthen the relationships. Some of the things included in this section include parameters around school, community, and parent relationships, relationships with parent organizations, media relations, policy around the use of school property and facilities, and the relationship between the district and the police department, among other policies. So this is our first read tonight. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Okay, if anything comes up, at any point, just you can shoot me an email, and I can hopefully answer it, or we can discuss it at the next meeting. Next, 9.5, to discuss the timeline to begin in-person school committee meetings. Just wanted to get a feel for how people are feeling about that. Personally, I miss it. So does anyone have any thoughts, strong in either direction?
I'd like to get back to meeting in person as well. I guess I'm just wondering, is there going to be a way to do it for us to meet and then allow the community to continue engaging remotely? Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, that's going to be one of the things we have to work out, because that's, I think, one of the positives that has really come out of this whole experience is the community engagement. It's so much easier to kind of follow along and see what's going on and participate. So that's definitely something we'd need to work with probably Harbor Media, and maybe the town will start thinking about this at some point. So working with those boards too and seeing how they're handling it.
Carrie, can we? I read that the town is not going to open town hall till June 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially, could we meet at one of our schools? What's their schedule for meeting in person?
I don't know what their schedule is, so that I think if everyone's okay with moving ahead with this, I'll reach out to the town and see what they're thinking, and I figure if we're all working on the same things as far as public participation, we can collaborate rather than everyone trying to figure out something on their own. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So is everyone good with just me reaching out to the town and and we can kind of talk about some specific dates coming up?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I miss you guys.
Yeah, definitely. It's not the same for sure. Okay.
Well, we'll be in person at town meeting.
We will. May 8th for anyone on the call. 9.6 is to hear the proposed per diem rates, including extended school year services, wages, and to act as appropriate. Dr. Austin?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for hanging in there tonight. Great job, Dave, on that. I didn't get to say that a minute ago, but thank you very much. So in your packets tonight, you have the proposed rates for stipends for the summer. What you will notice, there are some adjustments to that, and I want to say the resets have, I know that John and Dr. Vinnis and Dr. LaBillois and Susan D'Amato worked on these over vacation and really thought about the resets. And so the resets are really a reflection of the work of the special education or the feedback from the special education task force that had really identified in previous years or concerned that summer rates were pretty low in comparison to regional amounts. And so, and then the other part of this is that it's historically been very difficult to recruit and retain summer employees. And so there was a reset for that across the board. So I don't know if Dr. Vinnis or John Ferris want to add anything to that?
I would add that, we're talking about, in addition to ESY, the entire schedule of per diem rates for the FY22 season, FY22 year. And, just suggest I included a few notes in the back where, basically most of them went up about 2%. Some of the yellows, that's where we're suggesting some alterations. Some of the areas I thought that they were fair to begin with and they don't represent any increase at all. So they've been held constant. And I think we did meet with Suzanne and Jamie and Susan, and we did talk about the ESY and talked about the difficulties of getting teachers to commit to the ESY program, and thought that the reset, as we talked about it, was appropriate and directionally in the right area for summer school.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Not seeing any. Anyone in the public? Use hand function. I don't see anything over there too, so I guess I will take a motion.
I move that we approve the per diem rates as recommended by the superintendent.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Michelle?
Aye.
Jen? Did we lose Jen? Oh. Okay, so we can have her vote if she makes it back on. Ness?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Liza?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Okay, 9.7 is to receive notification on the resignation of two paraprofessionals, Karen McGordy and Andrew Rubino. So thank you for your service. Number 10 is subcommittee and warrant reports. Michelle?
Oh, sorry. The high school council is meeting tomorrow. The high school advisory council is meeting tomorrow. And then, or I think tomorrow, Wednesday. And we will also be getting back to the regular work of the high school council, in addition to the advisory work. It's put on hold for a couple weeks. I think that is all I have. I'm going to schedule, Dr. Vinnis, I will reach out to you. I'm going to try to schedule a special ed subcommittee meeting before May 22nd. So I'll circle with you to check your calendar before the new committee comes on. That's it.
Okay, Jen is having some trouble getting on. I'm not sure, so we'll move ahead, and if she can get on, she can give her update. Ness?
Yep, I have two things to report. East School Council met on April 14th, and we went through their results from their survey, and just the financed warrants that's in your packet. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Carlos?
The Capital and Facilities Subcommittee met on April 13th. We heard a request from Doug Foley and Katie Hartman with John Ferris on replacement of the shed, the irrigation shed that had collapsed. But we had set aside already money on the capital budget for that, so they are redoing the shed. But with that, Doug actually did a thorough presentation on the need for the replacement of the irrigation system, the heads. It's something that would cost a lot of money. After we heard his presentation, we decided to actually table that conversation, so we are not quite ready to bring to the full school committee yet, because I mentioned that with the study, the field studies, and the proposal for a warrant article to hire someone to oversee the fields, we're not sure what's the future is going to bring us. So we decided that, let's wait for that, and then we'll get together with the rec department to see, what are we going to do. But anyhow, that's that. We did receive an update on the master plan. John is working with Habib to update the master plan, so that's moving along. We received an update on Foster. Foster is moving along. By I believe July of this year, they will hope to hire an OPM to oversee the design of the operation. Likewise with PRS windows, they're moving along. Hopefully, the state will reimburse us up to 31% of the cost of the replacement of the windows. And everyone already know that we have $1 million set aside as a result of the broad cover mitigation money, which I actually would say to future members planning and running for school committee or other positions, that when you're running, you have the pleasure of saying things. And actually, I had mentioned that we, without the new developments coming to town in 2015, we needed to mitigate money for class size increase and so on and so forth. And as a result, selectmen went and asked for money, and we got $1 million for that for our schools, and also $1 million for the fire trucks. So sometimes it helps that we actually initiating conversations. So that's my report from the Capital and Facilities Subcommittee, and I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. I'm just going to quickly circle back to Michelle and then Jen.
Thank you. I had forgotten to mention that next Monday is the CPAC Town meeting with Dr. Austin at the Hingham Middle School, 7 to 8:30. So that's an in-person meeting. So look forward to seeing CPAC folks there.
Okay. Jen?
Hi, can you hear me? All I have is that the Foster School Council will be meeting on May 5th, and I will be attending that. That's our next meeting. That's all I have.
Thank you. Libby?
And all I have is that the South School Council will be meeting on Wednesday, and I'll be attending that.
Great. Liza?
I gave my salary negotiations report during executive session, and middle school council was going to meet today, but there was an emergency. Everything's fine, but Derek Smith couldn't make it, so they're meeting tomorrow.
And I'm trying to schedule a policy subcommittee meeting for next week to start looking at the handbooks and then some other things too. So with that, does anyone have anything for 48 hours? Dr. Austin?
I do, thank you. Just a couple things really quickly. Things that I probably should have mentioned, honestly, in my first report, and wish I had. I know a lot of this was pertaining to teachers, but last week, just a reminder, was Administrative Assistant Week, and I wanted to thank all of our administrative assistants. They do a phenomenal job. And next week is Teacher Appreciation Week. And it goes without saying, this has been an unprecedented 14, 15 months. And the folks that are working in our buildings are truly the backbone of our program, and very much appreciate their work. It's been a tough year that's taken a complete village to get through, and I couldn't be more proud of all of our support staff, our administrative assistants, our teachers, our administrators themselves, and of course the school committee for all the work you're doing. But that does not go without saying that also very proud of our students and our families who support all the work that we do. So I should have said that in the beginning, and I will do it now, even though that there are fewer people left to say it to, but we're on tape, so that's fine. And I want to update on people. I did not put the enrollment on the kindergarten. I want to give you a quick update. To date, we have 233 applicants. So we're a little bit shy of that 300 goal, or 275 as we had said earlier in the year. And so I would encourage everyone to, if you know somebody who is kindergarten ready or needs to register for kindergarten, please do so as soon as possible, because we need to plan accordingly for the year to come. So at this point, we have 233 applicants, so we'd like to see that a little higher. That's it.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have anything for 48 hours? Okay, seeing nothing, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Carlos. Give me a second.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I think I heard first. All right, Michelle?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Yes?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Liza?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Thank you, everyone.